Alrighty, chat, let's get started. Welcome to another Healthy Gamer GG stream. Just a reminder that although I'm a psychiatrist, nothing we discuss on stream today is intended to be taken as medical advice. Everything is for educational or entertainment purposes only. If y'all have a concern or question that is medical in nature, please go see a licensed professional. Okay. So today we've got a couple of cool announcements. We are going to be talking to the one, the only, the amazing Sapnap. And I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. But that's going to be great. We're going to hop into an interview and just learn a little bit about what his life is like. So that'll be great. Before we jump into that, though, we have a couple of quick announcements. The first is... So a lot of people have been asking us for research citations. So we do extensively research basically every video that we make. Lots and lots of research goes into every video, or well, the ones that are not like spirituality oriented. So we've sort of changed a little bit about the way that we do this, because oftentimes, you know, when we make multiple videos, let's say on anxiety, like some of the current videos are based on information from the past and previous articles. So what we're trying to do, and we also sort of asked people like, okay, why do y'all want citations? And it's usually to learn more. So we've created a citations page that is topic focused. So we will hopefully at some point we'll like have a bibliography for every video that we make. We have them internally. There's just a publishing process issue. But for those of y'all that are interested in learning more about the research, that is kind of the foundational research that we use to make our videos, this is the first version of the Works Cited page. So there's just a lot of really, really good stuff in here. Let me see if I can show, like, so for example, this is like one of the 5 best papers that I've like ever read in my career. So this is sort of the foundational research that we tend to use. And then this website will be updated regularly over time. So I know people have been interested in that, so we've got that up for y'all. Another thing that we're going to be talking about real quick is, let me show y'all this real quick. So we also have topic voting is going on for members in June. So for those of y'all that don't know, we will sometimes do, we started doing memberships about 5 months ago. And the purpose of memberships is to offer more in-depth content that is determined by the community. So this is like pretty cool, but basically what we do is y'all decide what the lectures are going to be. So it looks like for next month, we're going to do 2 in-depth lectures. One is going to be on emotions. This is going to be 201. Relationships and attachment styles and deep dive into learning. So basically like every month we vote on, or y'all vote on what we are going to be talking about that month. And what I do is spend about 6 to 8 hours to prepare a 1-hour lecture. So if we're doing deep dive into learning, that's funny because I was working on that earlier today. We're going to sort of really dig into both like yogic concepts. I already know what we're going to talk about. I'm just hearing about this. But so there's one yogic technique in which someone claimed to have learned 16 languages over 2 years by sort of transforming their mind into a particular state. So we'll explore like some of that kind of stuff, as well as like the neuroscience of learning and how to like improve your learning. So this is basically like stuff that is picked by the community. One thing about some of these lectures is that some of them will require like previous work. So one of the key things, so if we're doing an Emotions 201 lecture, for example, this presumes that everyone has watched Emotions 101, which we did a couple months ago. So if y'all are joining late, everything that you've missed is available for you to watch. So no biggie there. But part of the reason that we do this is we want people to be able to explore like more advanced topics. But that means that you can't be a rando from the internet, right? You have to like sort of spend some time and really learn the basics. And then we get to the more advanced stuff, which is a lot of fun. I think people have enjoyed it a lot. We also recognize that for a lot of people, you know, we do a lot of free stuff here at HG, and some stuff has a price associated with it. We recognize that that is difficult for some people. So just a quick reminder that we also have resource packs. So these are more in-depth explorations of a particular topic that have a set of videos, some degree of like insights or like written materials, as well as like some exercises to work on. This is one of our most popular features here at HG. This is absolutely free and it goes in depth on various stuff. The other thing is that, at this point we have over 1,000 videos on our YouTube channel. We've streamed for thousands and thousands of hours on Twitch. So at this point, like, it's hard to get through everything. So if y'all are interested in like, hey, I want to learn about like motivation. So what the team has done is gone through and curated our best videos on this, and this is absolutely free. Okay. All right. Enough waiting. Let's hop in with SapNap. All right. Oh, one second. Okay. I am going to do this. And then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. Hello. Oh, testing, 1, 2, 3. Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you great. I'm going to do...
Cool. Sorry, I had to change my... my mic was not set correctly.
That's okay. Let me go ahead and fix this real quick, because I don't know why this always happens.
I actually can't hear you now. Hold on.
Oh, GG.
Okay, hello?
Hello.
Okay, I can hear you now. Sorry, my stuff is messed up.
It's all good, dude. No harm, no foul.
Cool.
I don't see your camera, though.
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
I'm setting everything up now. It's one of these. Should be that one.
Can you just
I
count?
hate having computer issues.
Oh, there we go.
It's the worst. Oh, does it work now? Can you see me?
No. I can't see you.
Oh, it's loading. Okay, cool. Let me try.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like how we can sort of get this right, like 10 days in a row, and the 11th day it's busted.
I know, every time.
It's so
every
weird.
day, and then now it doesn't work. But actually, I might have found the reason why. Let me unplug this. Plug this back in.
We'll get there.
Hopefully.
Let me see this.
This.
Oh no. Let's do this. Let's do this. And then let's do this so that we can see. Okay.
Okay, this is just frustrating me now.
We can talk about frustration.
Come on, let me try this other camera. Let me try this side camera. Because I have two cameras. Let's see if this one will work.
Oh, someone has two cameras. Oh my god.
Okay, this one works.
Go.
This one works, whatever. We'll just use
There
this one.
we go.
I don't know why it doesn't want to work, but whatever.
Welcome, dude. How are you?
Oh, doing good. How are you?
Good. What do you go by?
Sapnap or Nick. You
Okay.
can call me whatever you want.
What do you prefer?
Let's just do Sapnap, I guess.
Let's
I
do
prefer Sapnap.
Sapnap it is.
Yeah.
And first of all, Sapnap, thank you so much for coming on today.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to we talk to people just about whatever.
Yeah.
For about an hour or two.
I'm down to talk about whatever for an hour or two.
Sometimes people have particular like questions or areas of interest in the realm of psychology, neuroscience, mental health, or spirituality. But sometimes we just vibe and like it's all good.
Okay, I'm kind of down to vibe. I guess I'm honestly down for whatever.
Yeah,
like, literally
so
whatever.
Can you just tell us, like, so what we try to do here is just have conversations with people about their experience of life.
Okay.
And can you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Gosh, I guess a little bit about myself. I'll talk about my likes. I am a really big, I kind of like everything. I'm one of those people that just kind of likes everything, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like I have a lot of likes. Like, I like computers. I'm really into video games, but I also like sports and stuff. I guess I would, maybe not like everything. I feel like I'm like a typical guy, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
I like sports. I like video games. God. I like anime as well. I have like anime posters in the background. I I like Pokemon. I don't know. I kind of like the typical kind of what everyone else likes. I don't know.
That's cool, man. So you're one of us.
Yeah, yeah, one of us.
Any favorite animes?
Yeah, honestly, I think my favorite anime of all time is Hunter x Hunter.
Okay.
But recently I've been
That's Hunter
really,
x Hunter.
yeah, Hunter x Hunter.
Okay.
And then but recently I've been also really getting into like Jujutsu Kaisen because like
Okay.
I have a carpet with one of like the characters on it. I don't know why. It's just been getting me because I think it's just
And
really good.
what is Jujutsu Kaisen about?
Essentially it's about these people and there's curses in the world people like humans emotions manifest into these actual things called curses that are like bad and like kill people and stuff
Oh
like
my
that,
god.
and then essentially it's their job to fight the curses to
And
help
the
people.
curses are born of human emotion?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, they're born from human emotions. Like let's say
Wow.
someone has like this like hatred, like someone's getting, I don't know, it's like a dumb example, but someone's getting bullied in school and then like, oh, I really hate this bully, and then like a curse is has come from it.
Interesting. It sounds like I definitely got to watch that because that seems to
Yeah,
be like an allegory of the human experience.
exactly, you should watch it, it'd be
Yeah.
great.
I was talking to someone recently. This was a kind of random conversation who was telling me that they like really believe, and this is quite a knowledgeable person who I respect a lot. But I was
Hmm.
stunned when they said that they actually like believe that there are things like evil spirits out there that will latch on to like negative human emotion.
Yeah,
And
it's kind of interesting because like I feel like I'm a person that doesn't believe in kind of like negative spirits or spirits in general or ghosts or whatever. But like I you'll never catch me like playing with like a Ouija board or something like that. It's like I will never like I'm just fine not knowing, if that makes sense. Like I'm like,
mm,
okay, that's fine. Like I don't need to go and like piss off some evil spirit if there is one.
I see. So it's kind of like you don't believe in it, but also like you don't mess around with it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to find out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've seen too many paranormal activity, too many spooky, scary like movies or shows that it just never works out. If they are there and they're pissed off, it never works out for the person that's messing around with them.
So might as well just play it safe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Even though your
There's no
logical
benefit.
mind is like, yeah, it's not a real thing, but
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
maybe if there was some like benefit, like if like for example, like if I was doing like a YouTube video where I go ghost hunting, I'm like, okay, well there's like some like there's some benefit behind this. Yeah, maybe I'll do it. But like I'm not gonna do it just for funsies.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, man. What about video games? What are you playing nowadays? So you stream Minecraft mostly still, or
Honestly, I don't even really stream Minecraft mostly. I kind of it's like two separate things. Like YouTube, I just only upload Minecraft,
okay?
but then I stream kind of whatever. Um, Honestly, it's been kind of hard finding games that are really enjoyable because I feel like I just stream a lot, so I just run through like all the games.
Hmm.
Like I've played a ton of Valorant, a ton of like League in my life, but recently I've been kind of just playing like random games, and that's like been the most fun.
Like what?
Like I've been playing The Forest recently.
Oh yeah, I've heard of
Um,
that. That it's like a survival game?
yeah, it's like you just like crash like for some reason you get abandoned on this island and there's cannibals on the island and you just gotta survive, and there's also like an underlying story that you can complete while playing the game. It's pretty
Hmm,
fun. Essentially like it boils down to like eventually you get to a point where you're just like running around like trying to complete the story and just like fighting cannibals essentially.
interesting. And on YouTube you make mostly and upload Minecraft, so it seems like those are separate in your life.
Yeah, I mean I view them very separately. I view them as like two different like entities almost. Like YouTube is like more professional, kind of thought out YouTube videos, like plan structured, well edited, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas when I go live, I kind of just go live and I used to have a plan. I don't do that as much anymore. When I used to stream, I used to have a plan. That was kind of, we used to have like a group of friends and we'd have a plan and we like stream together. But now I just
Hmm.
kind of go live like randomly. Like I was like, all right, I'm going live and I don't really have a plan. I just figure it out as I go.
Makes sense. So it sounds like cognitively it's very different. Like one is sort of like a crafted thing, and another one is like more spontaneous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just go live and it's kind of like, what do we want to play today? Let's play today, guys. I just like talk to my chat. I'm like, what do we want to play? What do we want to talk about? And then we just do it.
And in terms of Minecraft, how do you decide what to make?
The way I decide like what to make content wise is like I just have my two friends that I live with, Dream and George, and we just kind of make content plans. Like we'll talk about like we'll make content strategy and we'll talk like ideas and we'll formulate ideas with each other. And then once we have like we'll usually kind of have like I'm doing this video, you're doing that video, and you're doing that video, and we just kind of help each other do those videos and complete them.
Interesting. So it seems very like collaborative.
Yeah, it's very collaborative, like team effort.
Do you have a sense of which videos are like bangers when you, even from inception, or is it kind of like RNG?
No, there's definitely some that are bangers from inception. Like you'll know, like there's certain videos like I think my colorblind video that I uploaded, I knew that was gonna do good. I just knew that one was gonna do good. I also did like a food video where I tried all the Minecraft food in real life. I also knew that was gonna be good. There is some that you just know if they're produced well that they will turn out good because they're just a good idea that really fit your channel, that really fits a niche that's really gonna do like you can just look at like the state of YouTube and it's like it feels like it's gonna do very well. But obviously you can't be wrong. That's happened as well where I thought something was gonna be a banger and it wasn't. And I've also had videos where I didn't think it was gonna be a banger and then it was a banger. Like I think my most obvious video of that is like I did Minecraft, but every mob's a pig. And I remember like originally I didn't even want to do it. I was like, this is stupid. I was like, this is a dumb video. And then like my friends were like, no, trust me. Like it's gonna do good. It's gonna do good. And then it did really well, but I didn't think it was going to.
Do you have a sense of when you say you just know where that knowing comes from?
Um,
How do you just know?
I mean, I don't know how to explain it. I feel like it's just like I think YouTube's a skill, and like when you're around like a bunch of really good YouTubers, it's just like kind of like a skill that rubs off on you. Like, I mean, I've been around like Mr. Beast and Dream and like a bunch of huge YouTubers, and like you just ask them, like I try and ask questions like, why is this? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And then, there if you just ask questions, like I think, and you're just around people that are like successful and are doing good and are like smart about what they do, that it'll kind of just like rub off on you. I'm not very good at articulating why I know something will do good, but I feel like I'm good at being like, yeah, I think this will do good, or I don't think this will do good.
Very few people are good at articulating why they're good at what they do.
Yeah,
That
I don't know.
in and of itself is, I think, a skill.
I mean, there's certain things that you can articulate. Like you think, oh, I think the title is good. For example, I think I ate all the Minecraft food in real life. I think is a good title, and I think you can put a really good thumbnail on there. And I think the actual video, if edited well, is interesting. So I guess that's why I thought that video would do good.
So it's like interesting and requires a good kind of title, requires a good thumbnail.
And it fits my channel very well.
Anything in particular you want to talk about today?
No, I mean, I'm kind of down to talk about whatever. I mean, we can talk about myself. We can talk, I don't know, whatever.
Cool. I mean, I can ask you a couple more questions, for sure. Like, I'd love to learn a little bit about kind of who you are, where you grew up, how you got into what you're doing today.
Okay. Yeah, I'm down for that. I was just born in Texas, Houston, Texas. I don't know. I was like some normal kid. I really liked like video games and stuff, so I just started playing video games at a really young age. And that's where I met like my friends that I do YouTube with now, just online on like a Minecraft server. I just met them. Like we just became friends. We're all playing games together. And then as a typical dude that plays video games, I decided to go into computer science for college. I was gonna become a software developer. And then like YouTube was like we're kind of doing YouTube on the side, and I wasn't really doing it as much as the other two because I had a job and school at the same time. And then I got like I mean for me I think it was like lucky that actually that the pandemic happened and I had to like I lost my job, which at the time I was like fuck. I was like I just lost my job, like it wasn't like I wasn't like lost my job, but it was like, oh hey, we can't give you as much hours, like you come in like once a week or something like that. And then school became online, so then I just had like infinite time to just hang out with my friends and make YouTube videos. And then we started doing that, and then it just really popped off, and then it got to a certain point where I thought, okay, it's worth taking a break on school, which I had to really convince my parents that that was fine.
What did that conversation look like?
I mean, at first it was you should just do both, you should do both, and eventually it just gets to a point where I was like, look, I mean, I can very easily financially support myself, so why not like you just kind of explain to them that this could be very like it's just like I was like, well, if I don't do this now, I probably won't get another opportunity to do this ever again. So it's just where I was already ahead in school because like my parents were super like especially like my dad was super like you have to get grades, you have to do this, you have to like kind of like typical strict parent, whatever. So I was already like kind of ahead, like I was like a year or something ahead in college. So I just like used logic. I was like, well, I'm already a year ahead. So worst case scenario, I'm only gonna be like where you're supposed to be at this point in time.
Yeah,
That's
wow.
that's kind of how I did that, along with proving that it was financially I could support myself.
So it sounds like you really had a good argument to convince your parents.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like too hard because we were like successful, you know. Like I didn't try and stop going to college before I was successful because I thought that because to me I didn't see the point in it. I was like, well, if I'm not like doing good enough where I can live on my own and this and that, then it could potentially not be worth it to drop out of school. So I waited until a point that I was like, okay, yeah, it obviously clearly makes sense. And then
Got it.
if it just obviously clearly makes sense in my mind, then it's easier to explain it to my parents.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you were not like, oh, I'm a chase my passions and I'm gonna make something of myself. It sounds like you were very, um, like I'm getting the sense that your parents could tell that you were super thoughtful about it, right? So like you had almost like convinced yourself that this was the right move at this point, and you had
Yeah.
waited to do that.
I guess that is what happened. I waited to a point where I convinced myself that it was the right point, and then at that point in time, it wasn't too hard to convince my parents because I'd already gone through the steps
Yeah.
of convincing myself. So I
See,
just used those same steps to convince them.
it seems like you were quite mature with how you did it.
Yeah, but I think that's just because like my parents like I said like my dad's from Greece and stuff. So like when he came here, he's super Greek dad. Like you have to like so like they really instilled like these like things in me that's like I have to be able to take care of myself. I have to do this. I have to like typical. I feel like it's pretty typical for people that have parents that aren't from the U.S. that they're super like they want you to be able to take care of yourself. So because of that, I just knew I was like, well, I don't know, I just
Can,
kind of thought it like try and think it through.
can you say a little bit more about that? You said typical Greek dad. I don't know what.
Okay. I just think. I mean, I don't even know if it's typical Greek dad. I think it's
Yeah,
typical dad
immigrant.
that's not immigrant father. That's where or immigrant parents in general. So I just heard it a lot that people with immigrant parents just like they are super like kind of they really want you to be able to take care of yourself.
Hmm.
And then that's just what I've heard, and I've seen it with my dad. So I just feel like that's like a typical trope. Is that the word? I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
typical thing that happens when you have parents that are immigrants.
Yeah, when so my parents are also immigrants, and when I was 9 years old, my dad was like, "One of you is going to." I have a brother, so he's like, "One of you is going to be a doctor, and one of you is going to be a lawyer."
Yeah, well,
It's like I was like, "All right."
yeah, you're like, all right, well, I guess I'll do it. Yeah, my
So,
dad,
so
my dad wasn't like he didn't. I don't know if he cared what I was. I mean, he wanted like some job that was like somewhat prestigious. Like he didn't want me to. I don't know. Obviously, he did like the typical thing. Like whenever I would work at my job, like I remember he made me get a job right when I turned like 16 or whatever. Well, partially because I wanted a car, and he's like, "Well, if you want a car, go get a job." Like it was kind of like that. And then when I had the job and I would complain to him, I'd be like, "This sucks." Like I remember I worked like as a busser at some restaurant. I was
mhm.
like, "This sucks." I have to work 12 hours a day, and I make like whatever I was making. I think I was making like $4 an hour because I got tips as well. I was like, this sucks. Like, I don't like this. He's like, yeah, you don't like it? Well, you better go to school. Like, he's like, so you don't have to do this. That was kind of like his argument. He's like, yeah, see, he's like, I made you get a job so you'd realize how much you don't like working this job so that you can, you know, motivate yourself to go to school and get a better job.
Makes a lot of
Crazy.
sense. I had a patient once who his dad told him that there are two ways to make money in this world. You can use your body or you can use your
Hmm.
mind.
Yeah,
And
that's not.
his dad was like, "I've used my body, and trust me, you don't want to do that."
Yeah, I mean, like
It's
physical labor, it sucks. Like, I
yeah.
mean, I mean, I've worked a few jobs, whenever I was younger. Like, I mean, nothing super labor intensive, just like a bus or just, I mean, stuff where you're just standing on your feet all day. And I can attest, like, it's not fun. Like, it's not fun. But I think, funny enough, I don't even know if necessarily, I don't even know if college is like the exact path that everyone has to do anymore. I mean, I think it is for like certain career paths. Like if you want to become like a doctor or a lawyer or something, obviously you have to go to college. But like if you want to do something else, I think there's a lot of jobs that don't require you to go to college, funny enough.
I mean, I know a lot of people who understand a lot about medicine from reading Facebook posts. You know,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh yeah, like I did my own research and I just spent some time on Facebook and now I, you know."
But
So,
like they have to, but like for those jobs, like even if like, well, actually, I don't know. For a lawyer, do you just have to pass the bar? Like you don't have to have a degree. If you pass the bar, you can act as a lawyer.
it's
So
state
theoretically,
specific, I
it's
think. So
state
I
specific.
think you can go, like, I think the state of California, for example, I think you can practice. I mean, don't quote me. I'm not a lawyer, but I think you can go to a non-accredited school to get a law degree
Hmm.
and then pass the bar, and then you can just
Okay.
practice. But I think in other parts, maybe to pass the bar, you have to have a degree, but
Yeah.
maybe not. I don't know. because you can also represent yourself without a degree. So who knows?
Because it's kind of interesting because like obviously like I think to be a doctor and practice medicine you obviously have to have, like a certain degree because we don't want we don't want people just like going around running around as doctors and killing people. But yeah, but I think there is like a lot of jobs that you don't need a degree and that you can become super successful in without a degree and
Like what?
I think I don't know exactly. I just feel like there is like I mean I'm successful in my job and I don't have a degree and I think there's a lot of skill in it and I think people could learn how to make like good content and upload it to YouTube, and I think it's a very learnable skill. I mean, I think there is luck involved in it as well, obviously, but I think there's luck involved with everything, anything. So I think, for example, like YouTube is a job that like you don't need a degree for, but you can learn it, and I think there's similar jobs like that. I'd imagine. I mean, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. And like you said, I think, you kind of mentioned that you've been quite successful. I think people in the content creation space, there isn't formal education for the most part, right? So it's stuff that people have to learn. And it's very clear that there are people who are better at it than others.
yeah, 100%.
And so I think we're also seeing, I was just kind of curious if you had particular ideas, but I think one thing that I'm seeing a lot of is like degree inflation. So it used to be that like in order to get a job as a teacher, you actually didn't need any degree. Then you needed a bachelor's degree. Now a lot of people want master's degrees. So like you have to go to school for longer to get like the same job. My favorite is you need 3 to 5 years of experience for an entry level position somewhere
Yeah,
nowadays.
yeah, I've seen that.
Right. And I think that we're also seeing, I think, for example, a lot of like major companies like Google, I think at this point no longer requires a college degree even to be a developer. So you
Yeah.
have these like boot camp oriented things.
Developer is actually a great example. I actually used that in an argument with someone that I was talking about, like for why you don't need to, like why you don't always have to go to college and why it's not exactly like the set path that it was anymore. Just because I have heard of developers. Obviously, I never actually became a full-on software engineer because I dropped out. But I have friends that are full-on developers and they have applied to jobs and they've lost job applications to someone that didn't have a degree that just like sat in their basement coding and learning and just got really good at coding just from practicing it and they're just like god tier developers now and like they didn't even go to school. So that's actually like that's an example of a pretty prestigious job that you can just teach yourself. And I think especially now with like AI and stuff, like it's so much easier to teach yourself as well. Like you can literally just add like you can funny enough, you can actually code with just like a lot of like software like programs like I was opening one and I was like just like messing around just for fun and my friend was showing me and you can just literally you can just tell it what to code and it'll code it for you and obviously if you have some baseline level of like coding you can like fix its issue like it's like errors and stuff like that. So it's really cool. It's like I think it's really cool and I think that's like an
Interesting.
example of like how like there's like a lot more resources that can help you learn things that you could have previously only learned in college.
Interesting. Yeah, that is cool. And it sounded like you were arguing with someone who believed the opposite, or what?
Yeah, they believe that you should go that like they believe that like go into like a why my okay it was kind of a niche argument. Like I was arguing that going to like a mid-tier college to me seemed kind of pointless. Like going to like an average college, like an average big university seemed kind of pointless because I thought it was super expensive and your degree is equal to the degree of a less expensive college. Versus I thought if you go to Harvard, obviously it's different because you have a Harvard degree and that gets you connections, et cetera, et cetera. You're prestigious, whatever, that will push you farther in life. But I thought going to an like a mid-tier college, I seemed like was pointless unless you just want like the quote unquote college experience or whatever because you're just paying more for the same degree. Then no one's gonna care if your degree's from mid-tier college versus lower tier college. Like they just don't care, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
So that was my argument. But they were saying, oh, there's like all these good resources and this and that and the other, and I didn't know if that was necessarily true. I thought it was true to some degree, but I didn't think it was worth like the dollar amount.
Yeah, I think it's getting crazy with just how expensive college is. So the value of things is very, very, very confusing now.
Yeah, that's
so
why my parents made me go to community college.
yeah,
Save
for
money.
good value, right?
Yeah, it was a good value. It was like you pay like $1,000 a semester instead of like 10,000. It's great.
Yeah, I went to like a state university for undergrad, and it was very cheap. I think it was more expensive than $1,000, but I think my tuition was like between $3,000 and $5,000 a semester.
Yeah, the tuition was like less expensive than just buying the books. To be honest, from what I
That's a
remember.
whole different scam, bro.
Yeah, the books is ridiculous.
And so how did you get into YouTube?
Um,
I kind of asked you this already, so it sounds like you were making videos, but then like what changed?
Well, what changed was my friend Dream, honestly. Like he just came to me one day. I remember it was really random. Like I was like the summer before I started college actually. I was just talking to him and he just goes like, it's actually kind of ridiculous. He goes randomly, he goes, I'm gonna become a YouTuber. And I was like, what is this guy talking about? He's gonna become a YouTuber. Like, obviously at that time, I didn't know anything about YouTube. I just thought it's like you get kind of lucky and you upload videos and then people just like randomly like it. And he's like, no, I'm gonna become a YouTuber. I was like, why? And then he's like, he explained to me that he'd been like studying the algorithm for months and he's been putting in research and he saved aside some money and he was just gonna give a crack on it, like take a crack on it, and he just truly believed that he was gonna become a YouTuber. And I was like, okay, well, if you become a YouTuber, I'll become a YouTuber with you. Let's do it. And then he just started doing it. And then, like I said before, he started doing it, and it was like kind of him, and George. We all started kind of doing it. And obviously, I was doing it less at the time because I had like college and school. But then, because of the pandemic, I was able to focus on it more. But that's kind of how I started doing it. My friend Dream started doing it. I was like, all right, well, I'll do it with you. It sounds fun. Like, why not? What's the downside? Sounds fun. Obviously, like when you're younger, you like everyone. Like I feel like as a guy, it's like you either want to become a famous basketball player or like some famous sport player, and then you realize, for most guys, I'm not I'm not tall enough, so I can't become a famous sports player. So I like video games, so therefore I'll become a software like developer, but like secretly, everyone wants to kind of become a YouTuber. It seems kind of fun.
Yeah, it's so interesting how logical it is, right? It seems like quite open-ended in the sense that, oh, you can do anything that you want in life, but a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to do this or this.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I think for me, like, I feel like I'm a logical person, so like I obviously want to become like a basketball player, right? And then I like really liked basketball. I played a lot of basketball. I played on teams, this and that and the other. But at some point I was like, I think it was in high school, I was like, I'm like gonna end up being 5'8". I just can't become a basketball player. It was like, I mean, like, I guess I could, but like, it just seems really unlikely given that everyone else is like 7 foot and they're just gonna block every shot that I ever shoot. So,
what do you mean I'm a logical person? What does that mean?
I think I'm a logical person because I just think things out, and I like to take the path of least resistance a lot of the time.
Okay.
Like I'll be like, for example, like basketball. Like I guess I could have just trained and trained and trained and tried to become the first ever 5'8" basketball player. But I was like, it seems kind of unlikely. I guess I'll just like pivot. Like, because I mean, like I understood that like genetics play like a giant part in becoming a professional athlete. Because like, even like coaches, like I remember like coaches back then would be like, I remember one coach was actually really honest, and I actually appreciate that. He's like, it's like 30%. He's like, it's 30%, 30 to 40% effort, but I'm honest with you guys, it's 60% genetics. Like if you're like 6'4" and you're just like, you can run fast and jump high, you have a much higher chance of becoming a basketball player.
Wow.
So.
And so you said that you're a logical person. What's the alternative?
I guess like emotional. Be like, I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna train every day for the next 8 years and try and become a professional basketball player. I guess I'd assume it means like emotional.
Okay.
Which I can be emotional actually. Sometimes I can be like super emotional. I'm either logical or I'm super emotional. I feel like that I get to a point where I just like it just like flips a switch.
How does that work?
I don't know. I don't know. It just like flips a switch. I guess there's certain things that make me emotional, but there's certain things that don't. I also feel like sometimes I can just like turn it off. Like, I'm like, okay, like emotions. I'm like, okay, I need to like focus up. Like I need to just like I need to not be emotional and just look at this like very like objectively and just like figure out like what the best solution is, because sometimes like there's like situations where it's beneficial to be like that.
Okay.
I don't know what situations those are, but
it's beneficial to be able to suppress your emotions.
Yeah, I think so, because
absolutely.
I think sometimes, I think so. I think like if there's like you're like mad at someone, like it's just like a dumb scenario, but I try and do it a lot of times when I'm mad at my friend. Like, I'm like, all right, I need to stop being mad. This is like a very basic example, but I'm like, all right, just stop being mad. Let me think at it. Let me think through it from his perspective and why is he upset with me? Why are we mad at each other? It's like a really dumb example. That's like an example where I just will be like, at a certain point, I'll be like, okay, I just need to stop like being angry and like think about this.
Why is that a dumb example?
Because it's just like two friends arguing. There's no like, it's like two good friends arguing. There's nothing on the line. There's no like, I can be mad at him for like whatever. It's not gonna matter. We're just gonna continue being friends, I guess.
No, I disagree completely.
Why is that?
So you say that you're good friends.
Yeah, like we've been friends for like a long, 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 long time.
And therefore, if y'all get mad at each other, it doesn't matter, right? You'll always be friends.
Well, I think it depends on what we're mad at each other about.
Sure.
If it's we're mad at each other about something, like a lot of times, like we're gonna. I'm saying that in my example that I was giving you, where we're mad at each other. We're mad at each other over something not important, not something important. I'm mad at my friend because he took my ice cream or something when he usually doesn't, but he had like some reason to. But I was like, I don't care. You took my ice cream. You can't do that.
Yeah. So Sapnap, I would actually say that the reason that I would say it goes the other way. So the reason that y'all are good friends and that you will always be good friends is because of the way that you manage minor conflicts.
But it actually didn't always used to be like that. It's actually kind of recent that,
What
like I'd
changed?
say in the past, I don't know. I think it was us living together. Well, it's mainly for me and my friend George that like we've actually become. I think our relationship has become a lot more healthy. Like we'll talk about things. Like we'll talk about why we're mad at each other and why what he did upset me and why what I did upset him, which I don't really do with anyone else. Kind of interestingly enough, because at first like we'd always like kind of like not prank each other, like meme. We called it meme each other. Like for example, I don't know. Like let's say like I saw a stain on his shirt. I wouldn't tell him previously, even though we were friends and like good friends. I wouldn't tell him in the hopes that like someone would point it out and he'd be embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I remember, and then like one day he's like, look, we need to be friends. He's like, we're friends, but we're not friends. He's like, we need to like try and help each other and like not like just like own each other constantly. And he's like, and then he's like, for example, you have chocolate on your shirt right now. He's like, previously I would have left that there and hoped it melted, and then you would have gotten a stain on your shirt.
Yeah.
But then we started not doing that to each other, and then it just continued progressing into I think more healthy stuff, where it's like we'd explain why we're mad at each other and stuff like that.
That's some pretty fucking cool innovation. Let me tell you what.
Yeah, it was really really stupid. It was kind of funny.
No, I mean, I think it's sad that you kind of like, I mean, I really don't think that's stupid. I think it's like, this is, there's like a loneliness epidemic going on. Like it's hard for people to make friends. And I think what's happening is we have this like social skills atrophy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also don't like try to improve, right? There's also this like sentiment nowadays of it's kind of like, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best.
Yeah.
And so there's like the sentiment of like, and then there's also this weird shit that goes on. Like, so this is like, suppressed emotions coming out. It's like, this person is my friend, but I'm going to be fucking passive aggressive. And then it's actually, I mean, it's hard to sit down and say, hey, we got to stop doing this to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, luckily we haven't had like anything. I mean, most of our arguments are kind of like non, like in my opinion, like non-importance. Like it's not like really a big deal. But I think it's good that we at least like talk about it, because I hope that if eventually there ever is a big deal, that we will be able to.
Sounds like you guys are laying a foundation of communication.
Talk it through.
Yeah.
I hope so. That'd be nice.
That's good, dude. I think it's actually like we see this a lot also in like male platonic relationships where like dudes don't know how to like talk to each other anymore. It's like, hey, bro, we gotta like, I know we're friends, but we gotta start being friends. It's like, what does that mean? Like, we both know exactly what it means.
I think a lot of like, at least all of my, I mean, a lot of my male platonic relationships is honestly, it's just everyone's just kind of like mean to each other, but it's like funny. So it's like interesting. I find that like really really common. Like it's just like a bunch of dudes and we're all just like we're all making fun of each other. But like
there's a scientific.
That's not necessarily bad. I kind of like it. Like it's like funny. Like,
yeah, it's kind of sad. So there's a scientific term for that.
What is that?
It's called the negative expression of a positive affection. It's something
negative. What does that mean exactly?
Negative
so
expression, right?
But,
so it's of a positive affection.
So you're being mean because you like each other.
Yes.
Like.
So it's like when someone gets engaged, right? We're very happy for the person, but we're like, oh, brah, you're so whipped, brah. Oh my God, brah.
Yeah.
Right. And then you kind of clap him on the back. Like we express positive affection through a negative expression. So we basically, make fun of each other.
I guess I think that's fine. I think as long as it's not like the only time, like you only do that, I think it's fine. Because I kind of like that. Like I don't know, like I like that. It's like funny. I just I mean I like to laugh and stuff. Like that's like as long as like you're not actually being like too mean about it, which even sometimes it is fun. Like as long as everyone's okay with it, it is fun to actually be mean. To like because it's just funny. Like I like friendships where it's like everyone can kind of like be like a jerk to each other, as long as it's like in like good taste. You know what I mean? Like you're doing it to be funny. You're not doing it to like actually just like piss someone off.
Yeah. So I think we're actually pretty good at recognizing the lack of malice, right? So there isn't an intention to hurt when you're mean to someone.
Yeah.
There's an intention to actually bond and even have fun. And as long as I think there's also reciprocity is important. So as long as it's like things I think get into the bullying realm when like one person is always being made fun of and like, but as long as there's tit for tat and we're kind of, you said you guys are memeing each other, and I think each other is a big part of it.
Well, I've also seen groups where like it's kind of interesting, like where like there is kind of someone on the bottom of the totem pole and they kind of get made fun of the most, but like sometimes that person I feel like they like almost like it because it sounds maybe I'm psychoanalyzing them, but it gives them attention because like sometimes I'm like why don't you like if that was me like I would be like guys like make fun of someone else sometimes. I would say something but like they don't care, which I mean obviously there's like multiple scenarios, but like I feel like there is scenarios where like they kind of like it, which is interesting to me.
Can you say a little bit more about that?
I can't say I don't want to get specific, but I've seen like friend groups where like someone gets made fun of the most, but like I feel like they don't mind it. And like they don't mind being made fun of the most.
How do you understand why they don't mind it? Because it sounds like you would mind it, right?
I would mind it. But that's because maybe they're just more secure with themselves, or maybe they like the attention. I don't know. I would assume it's because they get more attention because.
Yes. So I think it's possible for sure. So I do think that it's interesting the way you're describing it. I would use slightly different words, which I don't blame you for, because I think it's, I think you'll, so I would say that people who are frequently the butt of jokes very frequently do engage in certain kinds of behaviors to keep themselves in that position. So I think that's maybe what you're leaning into.
Yeah, that's
right. So
because like I don't know. Like
so they for a prime example, like so you would say, hey guys, like make fun of someone else. You would say something or do something to stop the behavior if you were unhappy with it. And other people will sometimes even do things like make fun of themselves or like other kinds of things. The interesting thing is I don't think they like it. So in my kind of more clinical experience, I think what's going on is oftentimes they are afraid of what happens if they try to stop it.
I see.
So if you're insecure and you're in a friend group, trying to challenge people who are making fun of you can sometimes come at a high cost. And oftentimes these people engage in this kind of stuff, even if like your friends aren't going to bully you further. Like if you said like, hey, lay off, like most people will be pretty nice to you. But oftentimes this comes from like places where they tried that and it didn't work, or they're afraid that if they try to set limits, like people won't invite them to things anymore and people will ostracize them and stuff like that. So they kind of feel like they can't rock the boat. And so they kind of tolerate a lot of bad behavior.
Yeah, that makes sense as well. I could totally see someone operating like that.
And who knows, maybe sometimes they just do it for the attention.
I surely there's got to be at least one person that just likes it.
Yeah.
Like they just like they don't care, and they obviously if you're being made fun of and you don't care, you are getting more attention. So there's got to be at least one person.
So out of the stuff that we've talked about, I know we're kind of bouncing all over the place, Sapnap. Anything in particular seem interesting to you, or anything you want to talk about a little bit more?
Oh gosh, do you have any options? What do people typically? I don't know.
Sometimes if people like want to understand something about themselves, or if they want to like if there's something that they are curious about, like people will sometimes ask about things like meditation. Sometimes we'll talk about consciousness and what happens after death. Like sometimes and I think platonic relationships and even dynamics like of friend groups, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff about. So I think it's interesting because it sounds like you and your friends, y'all are all relatively successful YouTubers, right? Or the three of y'all.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you guys had a friendship before you became successful.
Yes. I think that's very important.
So that's also very interesting because I've worked with groups of people like that before. So a well-documented case, I think, is if you look at like PayPal. So a lot of the original people who started PayPal went on to do other successful companies. And so there's this interesting phenomenon in the business world of like basically like groups of people who all become very successful. And if you look at like the random chance of it, the likelihood that 3 separate people who all decided to become YouTubers all achieve the level of success that you do is exceedingly low. So there is actually a causative effect. There's something going on in y'all's interactions that result in all 3 of you becoming successful. And people have done everything up to and including things like case studies and stuff like that to try to figure out like what's the secret sauce with this group of OG YouTubers, or what's people haven't done that for OG YouTubers, but they've done it definitely in the business world.
I mean, as someone that is in one of those groups, I think honestly, I think it's just like it's just a different level of trust that you have with people that you kind of did it with from the beginning, that you're friends with before success, that you will just never be able to have with anyone else, unfortunately. Like you just won't. Like it's impossible to. I mean, at least in my opinion, I feel like it's impossible to have the same level of trust that you have with someone that has been there with you since the very beginning versus someone that you met while you were successful.
What makes it impossible?
I guess it's impossible to ever really know for sure whether or not someone is like your friend because, at least in my opinion, whether they're your friend because it's beneficial once you're successful versus not. Like, how do you know? How do you know for sure? Unless you could ask them, but it doesn't mean anything. They could just lie. Like, I guess like I just know that these guys are my friends because they want to be my friends, and that even if we stopped being successful and we had nothing, that we'd be friends.
Yeah.
So there's just a different level of trust that with them that I have that I don't think is possible to have with anyone else.
So when you make a friend now, what goes through your head about your relationship with this person?
Honestly, I mean, I don't think it's too much different now. It's just like, I think I just, when I make a friend now, I just want to be, I would like for that same level of trust to be there, but I just feel like it's hard for it to, actually like, I just think it's impossible for it to get there. The same level of trust. I just don't see how it's possible. Because that question will always be in the back of my mind. Which
So,
I don't know if that's a me thing, but I feel like it's just a logic thing. I don't know if it's just like me, whatever, but I just feel like it's just like logical. It's like, oh, how do you know like for sure?
Can you walk me through the logic?
The logic is, how do I know for sure this person? I mean, obviously, I think it's interesting because I think it is a bit of both. Like, I don't think someone is just gonna be my friend because it's like, I don't think I'm gonna become friends with someone that just wants to be my friends because it's beneficial. But I think it's like a subconscious thing to them. It's like I think a lot of the times it's subconscious. It's just like, oh, it's beneficial to be friends now, and that's in the back of their mind. Like they're not actively thinking that. So then they become your friend, and then when it's not beneficial, it's more easy for them to just not be a friend anymore. Whereas I won't ever have that with these guys because that's not in their mind, in the back of their mind subconsciously.
Yeah, so I think it's challenging. So what I'm kind of hearing you say is that, and I agree, by the way, and this is not unusual. So first thing is that we've worked with about 500 content creators at HG now, and this is a huge problem for basically all of y'all or us, if I include myself.
Yeah.
So I'm in some ways a little bit lucky because I had a life before becoming a content creator. So I had a lot of friendships, and I think that's kind of what you're alluding to as well, right? So like the friendships that you form before you're a content creator feel very different from what you form after a content creator.
Yeah.
And part of that is because like so I use the term business of friendship.
Yeah.
So a lot of content creators are literally in the business of friendship, and it creates all kinds of problems, especially when like people, you get like all these like hate videos get made, or people have drama or this kind of stuff, and then like it really blurs the line between, you know, if someone says, hey, I'm your friend, and someone just accused you of doing something a little bit shady, right? Then like, do they get guilt by association, and then their brand gets damaged, and like all this kind of like weird shit starts entering the picture?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in those scenarios, like I guess I don't necessarily like blame anyone for that, because it's like, yeah, you got to protect yourself. Like I get it.
Yeah.
I guess like for me, I don't know. I guess like, yeah, I mean, like I don't necessarily blame anyone for that. Like I wouldn't even
Yeah.
be mad at anyone. It's like, yeah, I mean, like I get it. Like that's like sometimes like you gotta take care of yourself, and like I don't
Sounds
blame you. But
sound
like that's why I mean, I didn't always used to think like that. I like when I first started doing content creation, like I was kind of a little bit, everyone's my friend. Like why would they, you know what I mean? Like I didn't think about it, and then like, you know, you learn, and
What do you
things
learn?
change. Well, you just learn that like you learn that like in the back, like for example, in the back of your mind, like like I think there's like a subconscious, like, oh, it's like I think there's a subconscious like like there's reasons why someone would be your friend that aren't like what you would want in a friendship, and it's subconscious. I think a lot, most of the time it's subconscious. I think it's an active thing, like, oh, I'm gonna be this person, and I'm sure I do it too, which like I would admit I do it too. I'd imagine too, like where it's like you're more likely to become someone's friend because subconsciously it benefits you to become their friend and stuff like that. Whereas in the real world that doesn't happen as much. I mean, I'm sure it still does, obviously with work and jobs and such. Um, so that, and as long as like that with also blurring the lines with like, oh, like you know, your friend is accused of something shady or this and that and the other, or I don't know what it is, that
Yeah.
like your friendship gets blurred because there's business involved and they have to protect themselves, which I don't blame anyone for. And I also don't blame anyone for subconsciously becoming, you know, having that subconscious thing, because I'm sure I do it too. I'm sure everyone, I mean, sure, literally everyone does it. So,
Yeah. So I mean, that sounds very logical.
but all that for me to say is that I value my friendships I have with the two guys that I do with before, that I value my friendship with them exceedingly high because we were friends before YouTube, and that I don't have to worry about either of those two things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's huge, dude. Like, I think, you know, we also see that in relationships where sometimes I'll work with people who become successful, and then like the romantic relationships get very, very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, I'm pretty lucky. Like the person I'm married to now, we started dating like when I was a nobody. And so our relationship in that way feels like pretty strong because, you know, she could have
Yeah.
easily upgraded at like any point.
Yeah.
And so
That's
I
impossible.
huh?
I said, no, it's impossible.
Now it's missed your chance if you wanted an upgrade, you know. So you know, it's interesting because I see that a lot, especially when I work with people who are like founders and entrepreneurs. Is like at some point dating becomes a little bit challenging because you're not quite sure like who this person is dating. Are they dating the real you, or are they dating the external version of you, the successful version of you?
Founder, CEO.
Right. You know.
Yeah. I think it applies to just any kind of relationship, whether it be platonic, romantic, whatever. I guess it doesn't apply to business relationships because you're both like a strictly business relationship because you're both under, you know, it's just business. Like,
No, I mean they're co-founders who fuck all the time.
yeah, okay, well, I guess if you're fucking your co-founder, then the line gets a little bit blurred.
Yeah, I mean that happens all the time.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Makes sense.
Yeah, and so yeah. So I'm kind of curious. So that I was just offering like a couple of things. So it sounds like we're kind of like moving in the direction of like relationships and understanding like these things. Anything? Does that sound okay for us to like talk about for a little bit more? You want to talk about something else?
I'm cool with it. I'll let you know if I'm like, I don't know.
So you know, I was mentioning earlier that like there are, you know, these cases of people who start things together and all become successful. Do you have a sense of what that secret sauce could have been for y'all?
I mean, I think it's just like, it sounds really corny. I think the secret sauce is that I think I think it's just our friendship is really like genuine. You know what I mean? Like in our videos, you see us like goofing around and saying stupid jokes to each other, making fun of each other, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's just genuine. Like our OG videos and our videos now, like that we would record, like it's genuinely us just trying to beat a Minecraft challenge while having fun. That is literally what it was. We were just like the laughs, everything in it was just super authentic. And I think that on top of like our analytic minds for YouTube and doing things that we think are good videos and testing the algorithm and this and that and the other was like a really good like combo.
Okay,
I think that's what made it successful for YouTube specifically.
and so it sounds like all three of y'all have analytical minds, and you guys like are good at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all like rub off on each other. So I think like I was less analytical, like like before I met them, and then they made me more analytical. And I don't, yeah, I'd say like yeah, we are all analytical, but I think it's because like we're together. You know what I mean? Like it just
Yeah.
like, but also it's like I don't want us to make it sound like we're like super analytical robots because we're not. But like I think we're analytical when it comes to like YouTube stuff and like being like, oh, like let's test the algorithm. Let's try this. Let's do this. This video idea seems good. Let's do that and this and that and the other. And we used to do that like a lot more than we do now. But that's what I think was really good.
Do y'all get into fights?
Yeah, like arguments. Not fist fights.
Fights.
Like fist fights.
Not fist fights, but just like an argument is like I believe this and you believe this, and we kind of argue it out. But like, do y'all have like conflict?
Well, like what separates and I believe this and you believe that. What makes it a conflict? I guess I don't know. I don't know.
Some degree of like personal. It's a brilliant question, by the way, Sapnap, because I think some people don't understand the difference. But I think some amount of personal association or even dislike, right? So like you can have people, just to give you an example, like you can have people who politically disagree.
Mm-hmm.
What creates a fight is not like a fist fight, but what creates a fight is like when you have a set of political beliefs, I think you are stupid, or I attach a personal devaluation along with the disagreement.
I mean, I'm sure we have. I'm sure we have, but I mean, I'm sure we've, yeah, when we've argued, I guess I'm sure there's times where we have used like a personal thing, like a negative personal thing to further our argument.
Yeah.
And whatever. So I guess we have fought, but I think you have to, it sounds weird. I think to have like a next level of friendship and a relationship with people, that you have to, in my opinion, you have to go through everything to know that you can go through everything, to have that level of like, oh yeah, we fought before, but like we ended up still being friends, and I feel comfortable that if we do get in a fight in the future, that it'll be fine. In my opinion, I think you have to go through pretty much, you have to go through an argument, you got to go through a fight, you got to go through a big fight, you got to go through this and that and the other, to know, at least for me, to know that like, oh yeah, our friendship is secure, and that I know if we will fight again, or we do have a huge big fight, that it's gonna be fine because it had it previously in the past.
Do you think y'all are unusual in that way?
I guess I don't think most people think like that, so maybe I think I guess that is like slightly unusual, but I think I think that's the correct way to think about it. So
are they logical too?
Yeah, like I said, like we can be. Yeah, I think so. I'd say so.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So
but it's like I think a lot of times we're not logical in the moment. Like I'll be like someone who's, I'll be like pissed off. I'll be like, oh my god, like, and I'll be saying things, like we'll be arguing in like a text message, and then eventually it'll get to the point where it gets logical, and then we'll be like, well, I didn't like this. Like at first it'll be like, you're a dumbass, so why'd you do this? Blah, 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 blah. Pretty typical. And then eventually it gets to a point where it's like, I didn't like this because you did this, and you should have done this. And then he'll be like, you reply, and you'll be like, well, I only did this because you did this, and then it gets, and then once it gets to that point, it gets resolved.
Okay, interesting. So, yeah, that's so interesting. So this is kind of like, I guess this is just what we're talking about, and if you want to change topics, let me know, Sapnap. But like what I'm hearing is that there's like 3 or 4 really important things, which I think are actually quite rare that y'all have together. The first is that there is authenticity and your content is genuinely enjoyable. This is absolutely necessary for making good content. So y'all are having fun. I think the second thing is there seems to be a couple of different collaborations that y'all do that are not related to the content that people see. So y'all collaborate what sounds like creatively. Right, so you bounce ideas off of each other. So you kind of have like a couple of different heads that are all good at making content that are then like trying to decide like what to do. That we also see with like co-founder groups when you have like three people who have an entrepreneurial head, and when they bounce ideas off of each other, the finished product is usually way better.
I like to touch on that actually.
Yeah.
I think that that's spot on. I think like I think we all have like different like in the ideology phase of our content, like brainstorming and this and then the other, that we all are very separate, very different. I'd say like Dream is very like the guy that's coming up with the ideas. I'd say George is the guy that's like shooting down the ideas. No, this one sucks. I don't like this one. He's kind of like sometimes like annoying. It's like, come on, please, let's just let's do it. And then he's like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't think it's good enough. And then I'm like the guy that's like, I'm kind of more of like the let's just do it. Let's go. Let's go. I think this one's good. Like, and I'm like kind of like pushing us to like actually go and do it. So I think that's how like we work.
Yeah, so that's really interesting, right? So there's a dynamic of like, so I won't name who, but there's a pair of very successful investors that invest that have a very good track record, and they have a very similar dynamic. So the first thing is that they don't make an investment unless both of them agree. And secondly, like one of them is like the stuff who brings things in, and the other one is the person who shoots things down.
Yeah.
And what they find is that if they both can get on board with something, then it's
probably
a really
good.
good idea.
Yeah,
right?
makes sense.
So it's interesting that y'all have an idea generation, like an idea opposing, and then like someone's the brake, someone's the fuel, and someone's the map.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how you can just see that, like even how you describe it. So you guys have a creative process that seems to work well. It sounds like y'all are also good at like your post-mortem, so like your analysis after the fact. What does that look like?
Like after postmortem of what?
Like when you guys, let's say y'all decide to go ahead with some idea and it turns out to not be that good. What does that look like?
I mean, yeah, like, it'll be like disappointment. Like, oh man, that video sucked. But a lot of times it's just like, well, what can you do? It's just you learn from it. Now we know that that is not a good idea. I think there's you know, it sounds stupid, but there is like positive to gain from it. It's like, yeah, like, well, now we know that that idea was not as good as we thought it was, so we don't have to spend more time on it. Versus if it was a good idea, we would do something similar to that idea and then try and branch off of it. But now we know that's not a good idea, so we'll move on to the next one. Is like the way we try and look at it. Obviously, there's gonna be disappointment. There's gonna be, oh man, that video sucked. I wish it did better. And I think that's something that like we've like, you know, it's like we just have to. He's got to keep going. He's got to. It's like
Is
keep
there
going.
is there blame?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure. I'm trying to think. Is there blame? No, I don't think so. I don't think anyone like there. Rarely do I think. I think we view it all as like a collaborative effort. So it's like, okay, the blame's on all of us equally. If there is blame, like it's like, okay, well, obviously we shouldn't have done that video. We're idiots. Like we're stupid. Why did? There's a lot of we. Why did we do that? There's rarely. I feel like there's like a. Why'd you do that?
Why isn't there blame? You have any idea?
Well, for like a YouTube video, it was because like no one's forced to upload a YouTube video. It's like we all like it's like we all agreed on it. Like, you know what I mean? Like if like or if you uploaded it, at least at the bare minimum, you agreed to do it. It's not like the other two guys are like, you have to upload this. You need to upload this. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's times where like where we're pushing you and we're saying, yeah, you need to upload this. We really think you should upload this. You should do this. But like at the end of the day, it is your YouTube channel, and like obviously, our YouTube channels are just so intertwined that it does feel like a we thing.
Okay.
Like on YouTube wise, they're just so intertwined. Like I just like it just does feel like a we thing. Like it almost feels like Dream and George's channels are mine, and my channel's theirs, vice versa.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because I had written something down some time ago, which is the word ego. So I'm noticing a lack of ego. So I'm not hearing a whole lot about jealousy.
Well, I mean, I do get jealousy. I just don't get jealousy with my two friends. Because I feel why it benefits me if they're successful. It so massively benefits me. Like my YouTube channel has 4 million subs, but like and like my whatever is, but my numbers are so inflated because I'm attached to more successful people, but I don't view it that way. It's just like, okay, like
How do you view it?
I view it as their channels are partially mine. I mean, I guess they're not, but I feel like
Yeah.
I view it like that, and and they view it like the same way. Like they're my channel's partially theirs, even though like legally and whatever it's
Yeah,
not,
of course.
but
No, no, no. But I
monetarily
mean,
it's not. But
I think what I'm hearing, like, so this is actually quite rare, right? So if you look at groups of content creators, what usually tends to happen is there's a lot of ego at play. There's a lot of jealousy at play. There's a lot of, I put more work into this. And
I mean, sometimes that does happen. Like sometimes I'll be like, I want that idea, and then like sometimes there's a good idea, and like we'll be fighting for it a little bit. But then sometimes I'll just be like, well, or sometimes George will whatever, or we'll realize it fits better on someone else's channel, and like we'll drop it. It's like, oh, whatever. Like yeah, it is like annoying, and like I'm not gonna be like, yes, I'm so happy you took the idea that I wanted, but like at the end of the day, if George's video gets it's so analytical. If George's video, let's say I really wanted a video and it went on George's channel instead, yeah, George is gonna get the views and the money. But guess what? Every time someone watches his video and they watch all the way through, it's gonna be my video that's recommended afterwards. So, I mean, like
yeah.
there's that level of well, I am gonna benefit from this anyway. So
Yeah. So, no, I mean, I think the attitude is important. The concept of like we instead of me is like huge. So it also sounds like you guys have a very good method of conflict resolution, which is also based on trust and even like some communication skills that y'all have advanced. And the reason I bring this stuff up is because like I've worked with people where like I try to go in and I try to teach this. So it's really fascinating to see. So I see like creative collaboration, authenticity, analysis, trust, and conflict resolution, and then an absence of ego and a kind of like us mentality.
yeah, I think with us, we do have ego, but it's us as we have like us as an ego. Like
Yeah.
for us three, yeah, there's an ego there,
Yeah.
100%. I mean,
But that binds
it's
you all
impossible
together.
not. It binds us together. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. I think it's fascinating to hear, and I think a lot of people can benefit from like understanding. I mean, I would completely agree. Like this is almost like organizational psychology, where like how do you get a group of people to like function at their best? And it's so interesting because all three of y'all are quite successful, right? So there's something going on that y'all are doing. I mean, one option is that there's just a 1 in a million chance, and we just found the one house where there's like 3 people that are 1 in a million. But I think
I'm fine with that.
I think the much more likely thing is that y'all trust each other, that y'all are willing to. I also hear, that you guys kind of went in with each other, right? So when Dream was like, "Hey, I'm going to become a YouTuber," and you were like, "Okay, I'll do it with you, bro."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was kind of like that. It was kind of like okay, like let's do it. I mean, I just didn't see the downsides. Like, well, let's do it. So yeah, I think that was like super important that we did it together.
Yeah.
That we did it together. I think that's like super super important. I
Any
think
questions? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just rambling. Go ahead.
Any questions for me?
I don't know. I don't think so. Nothing off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like I'm just trying to think a little bit about, what we can learn from you. I think the way that you're logical is really interesting. You mentioned one thing, which is like, you said that sometimes you're logical until you're not.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I can get so fed up to a point. Well, it's almost like waves. It's like logical, and oh, I'm pissed off, and I gotta be pissed off, and I gotta cool. I mean, it's pretty like normal. I think you get pissed off, and then you're not logical while you're mad. Obviously, like no one. I feel like very few people. If you're logical while you're mad, then you're just like a genius because like it's so hard, and you're like hot and upset. Like it's like it literally just fogs your mind. It's terrible. But
Yeah.
boom, I would be mad, and I got to go through the whole like. If you try and talk to me before I'm done going through my stages of anger, it's just pointless. It's just pointless. We're not going to resolve. I have to calm down, and then we can go again.
How long does that? Do you realize when you're mad?
Not at the beginning. Not at the beginning. At the beginning, I'm like, no, I'm not mad. Like, what do you mean I'm mad? I'm mad. Obviously, I'm not mad. But then towards the end, I'll realize I'm mad, and I realize I'm calming down. I think mine is really fast. I think it's like abnormally fast. Like I'll be mad and I won't be mad anymore. It's like fine, whatever. Like I'm just so like over it. I just want to get over it. I'll be mad, and a lot of times I'm done being mad before other people are done being mad, and I have to like wait. I have to like sit here. I'll be all right, whatever. I'll wait for him to stop being mad. Mine's really quick.
What is really quick?
Like literally like 10 minutes, like 10, 20, 30 minutes. Like I'm not mad for hours. Like it'll literally be within an hour. I'll be like over it. Usually like literally like 10 minutes. Like I'll be mad. Like let's say like we had like an incident outside. I'll be mad, By the time like we separate, I'm like, I'll be like, get away from me. Like, get the fuck away from me. I will separate. I'll go to my room. I'll drink a little bit of water, and I'm done. I'm done. I'm ready to resolve the conflict.
And you, what's it like to wait for other people to calm down?
It's not too bad. It's not too bad. I was like, I'll just wait a little bit, and usually I'll be the one that will like at least like I'll try to like be the one that obviously like there's back and forth. Like sometimes they'll be the one to, but I'll try and be the one that because I'm the one that I feel like usually gets over being mad quickest. That I'll try and be the one that's like, look, like let's mediate, let's negotiate, let's whatever. And I think that usually will bring down their madness if they're seeing me being like, oh, like let's being reasonable and let's solve this.
Can you teach us some of the words that you use when you're trying to do that?
We're really stupid. I have a bunch of weird words. I'll be like,
no, that's why I'm asking.
I'll be like, what do we say? I'll be like, let's I'll literally say, let's negotiate. Let's be there's a lot of let's be reasonable. Be reasonable.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of our words. We have a bunch of like really weird, stupid words that we use. Like there's like if you were to like listen to us, you'd think we're like weird. They're super weird. I can't think of them off the top of my head. But there's a bunch of like just niche words like time to be reasonable. Like there's a bunch of reasonable and negotiate. I think it's like the main ones.
No, I mean, what makes you think that that's stupid?
Because it just sounds funny. I don't know. I don't think it's actually stupid. I just think it just sounds funny. When I say stupid, I don't even. Sometimes I don't actually mean like stupid.
Yeah.
I use stupid like a lot when I don't actually mean stupid. But it would be. It sounds funny to me. Let's negotiate. Like what do you mean? Let's negotiate. Like what are we like? Like are we at war?
Well.
Kind of.
Right. So I know it sounds kind of like an unusual word, but that's actually like exactly why I'm asking. So I suspect that. So a couple of things. The first is that, people will say like, okay, what's the foundation of a good marriage? And people will say communication is key. But no one ever teaches you what that means. Like communicate what? Like we're talking to each other all the time, but that's not the same as communication. Mm-hmm. So you have something you want to...
No.
So
I was just like looking up.
I think it's like really interesting because we all understand the importance of communication, but we don't know like how to communicate with friends. Like we don't know what words to use. So I think one of the biggest problems that I see is that there is an assumption that there are words to use. So people will be like, I'm going to have a class on communication, and this is what you should say. This is what we get taught as therapists. Like there are ways to say things, and there's some merit to that. But I think one of the biggest things that's important for communication is actually developing your own language.
Yeah.
So I find that like in my own relationships and even my platonic relationships, my romantic relationships, like they're like developing your own language for things to capture your experience of stuff. So that like we both know what we're talking about, because it's hard to put relationships into words.
Yeah, I guess we're really good at that. We have a bunch of words that just like if you were to listen to us talk, like I swear to God, if someone had a camera, they're just listening to our conversation, it would literally sound like we're speaking like a different language sometimes. It would make no sense, but like to us it makes sense. Like it's like we have a bunch of words that we use to describe a way of feeling something.
Does anything else come to mind? Because I'd love to hear just examples of that.
Oh God. I don't know off the top of my head. It's kind of hard to tell. It just happens. I don't know. To me, like I don't even think about it. I don't think that I'm doing it. I just do it.
Yeah. So it's an automatic language thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like even when we're not just trying to like resolve a conflict, like, even if it's just like explaining something that we thought was like funny or interesting or weird or whatever, we have like different ways of like describing it in a way that's not the typical English language.
Yeah. So this is like I'll give you all just a couple of examples that I've seen. One is so we use I use a conversational technique with my wife where when we want something, we will just ask, like we'll state where we are on a scale of 1 to 10. So it's like, do you want to eat pizza or sushi for dinner? And I want sushi. Well, I want pizza. And then this can go back and forth for a little while.
I see. So you guys put a 1 to 10 and then average it?
We just put a 1 to 10. And then like whoever wants it more gets it. And then there's also some interesting gamesmanship there where like if I say 7, like you can bump it up to an 8, right? So the first person who gives a number is almost
typically
like
loses.
can lose. So you're opening yourself up to be like, so someone else knows exactly where you are, right? So they can always outbid you, and there's no cost. I mean, but it's also like a we, so it doesn't help to do that. But that's like a simple way of like navigating conflict. How much do you want to do this versus how much do you want to do this?
That's interesting. I think typically we have things like that, but there's no. The way we do it is in a way that, and I couldn't tell you how, I couldn't explain it to you, but like we do it in a way that like someone doesn't have to cede that first, whatever. Because I'm not gonna lie, maybe I'm a bad person for this, but if I wanted sushi, and let's say I'll just use George's example, said he wanted it 7, he wanted pizza 7 out of 10, probably 9 times out of 10 I would say I want an 8, just because I want what I want.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm selfish or whatever, but so we try to find ways that we don't have to make ourselves like whatever. Like for example, like we'll do something like, for example, I'll tell like we'll do like a silent version of that where we'll both whisper into Dream's ear how bad we want it, so that way we don't have to,
Do you guys actually do that?
No, but that's an example which we would do that.
Wow,
we would do something like that.
Yeah. So I think, but I think that makes sense, right? The main thing is like everyone is on the same page about what the game is. So it's not like it's either PvP or PvE, and y'all have kind of a PvP situation, which is not bad. It's just the only real problem happens is when one person thinks it's PvE and the other person thinks it's PvP. That's when you get into trouble. But it sounds like y'all are on the same page around communication.
Yeah.
And I think this is also one of the reasons why, so there's like different kinds of like language that we'll use. We'll have like code words to mean like particular things and stuff like that. Like we'll develop, like we have our own robust language that if you saw us communicating, once again, it would seem very foreign. Like people wouldn't understand what we're saying. So I think one of the really interesting things that we're seeing, especially with relationships right now, like not romantic relationships, but even platonic relationships, there's this loneliness epidemic. And I think part of the problem is that friends are so replaceable. So especially with things like Discord and online relationships, like you can find a group of new people very quickly. So I don't think you have the opportunity to develop these kinds of like language skills. And it's not like skill at a particular thing. It's developing your own vocabulary for a group of people so that you all know what you mean. I also do this in therapy as well, where one time with a therapy patient, we noticed that when we would get like into stuff that was like somewhat serious, like someone would make a dick joke.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like, okay, let's like lighten the mood. And then what happened is we both noticed that, okay, like we're doing this for a reason. Like when do we make a dick joke? If we make a dick joke, that means that we're talking about something serious. And now we know what a dick joke means. So even then, at that point, it's like, okay, is it time for a dick joke? It's like, yes, let's make a dick joke. And then we kind of laugh about that. We don't actually make the dick joke, but we're like kind of aware. So you have to develop your own language. I also see that in esports teams too, where people like, some communication is understandable, but some of it is like, it is different.
Yeah. I could definitely see that being in esports teams. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I guess that's something I didn't really notice. We just do it, and then you point it out, and I guess it makes sense.
Yeah, so I think it's super fascinating, and like I don't know exactly what people can take away because I think some of the stuff that y'all say will be generally speaking infuriating to other people. Like time to be reasonable. Like fuck you. Like I am being reasonable. You're the one who's not being reasonable.
I mean that does happen. That's literally happened before when someone's like not done being mad, and that's literally happened.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think it's like we like for example like with conflict resolution that it'll sometimes our stupid language is just like funny. It's like an icebreaker. It's like okay, all right, whatever. Let's resolve this. What's the point? Like I'll be like it's an icebreaker to a degree.
Yeah. No,
so nice.
I think that's huge. So like making the overture. Right? So like extending the olive branch and being like the person who signals to your friend like, hey, I'm prepared to let this pass or like, let's like move forward from here. It signals to them that I want to move forward from here. It's interesting. Even what you said then, I think that's really good. Done being mad.
Yeah. Are you done being mad?
Yeah.
It's just like I guess if someone else said that to me, like, yeah, if he says it to me at the wrong time, I'll be pissed off. Like, no, I'm not done being mad. But like, yeah, if it's at the good time, it's just funny. It's like, are you done? Like, it's just a weird thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we'll use, I'm thinking about some of my own language and we'll sort of, use similar things, right? Things that sound real asshole-ish, but like if you're genuinely asking, you're like, hey, are you in a space to hear this?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I think that is really useful. Like you can say to someone, I'm not ready to have this conversation right now, or like, I need some time before we address this. But them being mad is...
I guess like for me, I don't like it when it's too like if someone were to say that to me, like I'm not ready to address this, it would just like piss me off. Like I need like that level of like stupid language. I don't know why. Like I need that level of like dumb language. Otherwise, I'm like,
Yeah.
why are you being so serious? Like I mean, I'm like, why are you being?
Yeah.
It's like
So I think that just speaks to the importance of developing your own language, right? Because everyone's like niceness or politeness. Like I'm trying to think about. So you know, people will make clips of me like saying really mean things to people. So like, because when I interview people, I will sometimes be like challenging, or I won't speak in like a trigger avoidant way sometimes. I don't know if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I understand.
Like, you know, like in that moment, you're an idiot. And people will, someone even approached me recently to make a voice pack for a video game that's just basically clips of me saying things that you can then, I don't know if you're familiar with these, like, you know, taunts and things like that, but I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting, right? But I think the empathic message behind it, or the emotions behind it, are what's really important, right? So you can say like, you know, hey, let's negotiate or whatever, and it doesn't work for everyone. Like sometimes if you try to be like overly sterilized or polite, like it'll piss people off.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound like you're dynamic.
Yeah, I'm one of those people. If you're too correct, like if you're like, so I guess it depends. It depends on who it's coming from as well. Like if my friends, like my two friends here, would say that to me, I'd be like, what? Like versus if someone else I was arguing with said that, I would probably take it very differently.
Yeah. Does the statement "I'm sorry you feel upset" piss you off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like demeaning. It's like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking
pisses me
about? Like,
off.
what do you mean you're sorry? I feel upset.
Yeah, you did
should be
something
sorry.
wrong.
You made me upset.
Yeah, exactly. You did something like it's not my fault I'm upset. You're the asshole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't like that statement.
Yeah, so
But it can be used sometimes correctly, like in the right.
Agreed.
But very rarely, I find that would be good.
I like a, what the fuck, bro?
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. This is also the interesting thing. I've noticed that a lot of the right answers that we teach for communication tend to be like, don't work quite as well for men. So I find that like as a dude, like a really solid "what the fuck, bro" like really goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could go a long way. 100%.
Yeah. Anything else that you're kind of thinking of in terms of like what y'all do differently? Like how are these relationships that you have with these two guys like different from your other relationships?
I don't know. I just feel like we're like super. I guess I don't know. I just feel like we're very close. Like it just feels like, for example, like it would feel. I don't know. I guess it just depends. I mean, it seems pretty typical for if you're like living with people, but like if like. We just like I feel like we do a lot of things to each other. So with each other. So if like for example, if they were to do something without me, I'd be like, what the fuck? Like I don't know. I guess it's kind of like dumb. I'm trying to think. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. Couldn't tell you anything else specifically. That one seems pretty usual.
Yeah. No, I mean it sounds like y'all are pretty tight knit. And I think being able to live together is like a double-edged sword. Like if you can handle it well, it's really great, but it can create a lot of conflict. Sometimes friends don't make the best roommates.
Yeah, no, yeah, I've definitely heard that, but I think we're fine.
Yeah,
as roommates like so far. You never know; things could change.
I'm kind of curious, just if people from chat have like questions, like if you're cool with that.
Sure.
Because I think like you've been pretty much an open book, and I think we've kind of like I think the most interesting thing to me was just the way that y'all interact with each other and how y'all have been able to achieve what y'all have achieved. So since we've got some time left, let's see if some people are asking about a communication guide. Are you guys honest with each other? If you're mad, do you say you're mad?
I think we're super honest with each other. I feel like I don't hide literally anything from them, and I feel like they don't as well with me. I think we're very, very honest with each other.
Um, so what about like if y'all have conflict between two of y'all, like does the third person play like peacemaker? Like,
Yes, yeah, that happens a lot. That
okay,
happens a lot. But sometimes I don't like the peacemaker. Sometimes it feels like in certain scenarios that the peacemaker might be biased. Which, so the peacemaker that does happen a lot. Um, but sometimes it doesn't. The peacemaker, we try to use the peacemaker, but sometimes, at least to me, sometimes I think the peacemaker can be biased in certain scenarios, and also I can be biased in certain scenarios.
yeah,
Like it happens. It happens all the time. It happens whenever the other two are arguing. I'm the peacemaker. Obviously, I have bias, like in an argument. So sometimes it's a little frustrating.
so any advice for new YouTubers?
Advice for new YouTubers. Oh my gosh, I don't know. I'm so bad at advice. The only thing I can say is just try to put out the best quality you can. Take like just and try and find something that you actually like. Try and find videos that you're genuinely passionate about, or not necessarily passionate about, but that you enjoy because you want it to be authentic. I think a lot of stuff on YouTube is not authentic anymore. Like I think a lot of it's super like handcrafted, meant for the algorithm. And while I do think that is a very successful way to do things, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that and you shouldn't try to appease the algorithm, I think that you should try to appease the algorithm while doing something that is authentic that you like, because then it will just be better. Like no, I don't think there's any ifs, ands, and buts about it. If you're genuinely enjoying what you're doing, what you're filming, what you're recording, that it will be better than something that it'll be better than something that you think is a better idea, but you enjoy less.
Absolutely. I think we've seen that a lot where creators who sacrifice too much to the algorithm get burnt out.
Hmm.
And then the real tragedy is that then their content then suffers as burnout increases. So you don't
Yeah.
have that same authenticity, that same enjoyment. And that's really what makes content super successful.
Yeah.
So a couple of other questions. This is great, by the way. So,
Hmm.
what's the worst thing about being a content creator?
Um, I'd say privacy. I guess privacy. It feels like there's always people trying to like know things that you don't want to share, and like also it feels like, oh, like I can't just like sometimes I just like want to go outside and not get recognized and not have the fear of being recognized. Sometimes like, oh, like I look ugly today, like I look gross, I have like a pimple on my face or whatever, etc. And that's like sometimes like you just want to not worry about. You want to go to the mall, but you don't want to worry about being recognized because you don't want to take a photo because you look gross. But like you don't want to. Obviously, if a fan meets you, it's like oh, like I don't want to. I may never see this person ever again. I'll just give them the photo, even if I do look kind of gross. So I guess like that, you lose a lot of like random things, like not random things, but like things that you never thought you would care
Yeah.
about, like being able to go somewhere and not worry about being recognized, for example.
Yeah, I think
Privacy, I guess, as a whole.
I would say that there's a lot of things that we take for granted before we start getting recognized.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, and I know I've experienced that too in terms of just running into people sometimes. And it's like, this was not what I wanted to do today.
Yeah, and it's like simple things like, oh, it's like if I'm out with like my parents, say I'm like visiting home, I don't particularly want to be recognized with them because like I don't like I wouldn't want like my mom in the background of a photo or something on action. It's just like annoying. Like I don't want to. Like I wish I like in an ideal world like I could turn it off. Like no one could recognize me for the next 4 hours or something while I'm doing stuff.
Yeah.
I guess that's something I miss. It's just like yeah, just privacy as a whole. I guess I don't know. Like I keep harping on that, but yeah, just privacy as a whole.
I think it's tough. Are there like do you feel like you've missed out on like the college experience or things like that?
Oh God. I mean, I not really. I don't care. It's so worth it. It's so worth it. Where I guess like I don't feel like I missed out. Like, oh, I missed out on going to random college parties. Like it seemed like I guess like if I handcrafted my ideal world, sure I would have had a typical college experience and then done this. But because of the trade-off, I don't care. No, I don't feel like I missed out because
So
the trade-off to me is so worth it that I don't feel any kind of like I wish I went to a big college and had the college experience or whatever.
I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of intentionality when you decided to become a full-time YouTuber as well, right? So you were kind of balancing things ahead of time and
Well, yeah, I was balancing. Yeah, because I chose to not like. To me, it was a decision. Like if I chose like, yeah, I don't want to go to college. I want to pursue this. So yeah, partially because the decision feels less whatever.
And how do you manage things like anxiety, burnout? What happens if you don't feel like making content?
Um, I don't know. I haven't really experienced too much burnout, to be honest, just
Hmm.
because I don't know. I just think like I think I could. I don't explain it. I don't know. I haven't really experienced burnout, to be honest, and anxiety. I don't know. I am a very anxious person, but I've just been anxious for a long time that I kind of have like little methods to whatever. A lot of times I'll be like, you know what? I'm anxious about this right now. Let's see if I'm anxious about it tomorrow. Or just like little things like that. Because I am
What
a very, very anxious person.
what does that mean? You're a very anxious person.
Like I just feel like I'll just be like like I'll feel anxiety about something.
What
And
does
it's like
that mean?
hard. Um it means like I'll be worried that something is gonna go wrong.
Okay.
I'll be like, oh man, I really hope this doesn't go wrong. Or sometimes I'll be anxious like something stupid. I'm like, oh, did I say something weird? Is this person gonna think less of me because I said that? And then I'm only thinking that because I'm anxious. If I wasn't anxious, I'm like, no, that's stupid. Like obviously not.
Wait, so how often, when you say you're a very anxious person, is this something that happens to you frequently?
Yeah,
Like how
I'd say
often?
I don't know, very frequently.
Like every day?
I don't know about every day. I'd say probably around like I'd say I don't know about every day. I'd say multiple times a week I'll be like anxious.
Okay. And what are some of the tricks that you've developed?
One trick I developed is let's see if I'm anxious about this tomorrow.
Nice.
That's the biggest thing because a lot of times like I'll be anxious about something that I shouldn't be anxious about. I'm like, why am I anxious about it? Like the next day, like I'll be like, why was I? It's like stupid. Like why am I anxious about that? A lot of times it'll be like something that'll like trip me up. But if I wasn't anxious and I was thinking about it without like having that anxious feeling, I wouldn't be anxious. Like I'd be like I wouldn't care. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's really huge. So, a couple of things that I think it's so cool how you guys have like stumbled into stuff that we know scientifically, but like you guys
Hmm.
weren't taught, and you yourself
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah.
So, a couple of things that I've really noticed about the way that you manage your emotions is like one of your best coping mechanisms is time.
Yeah.
So you just give it time, which is
Hmm.
perfect. I think the biggest mistake that most people make with their emotions is that they're not able to be patient with them.
Hmm.
So if you look at just the way that the brain works, like the brain, any emotion that you experience is going to extinguish over time unless you keep feeding it.
Hmm.
So the best example that I use for this is you can have the perfect wedding day, but all of the joy from the perfect wedding day won't give you 40 years of happiness in marriage.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Right? So emotions are temporary, and our brain literally has homeostatic mechanisms that will decrease emotion if you're feeling a lot of emotion.
Hmm.
Some people will come to equilibrium faster.
Hmm.
Other people, like we know that if you have like ADHD, for example, sometimes you can experience more intense emotions for longer periods of time.
Yeah.
But I think time is like one of the biggest antidotes to emotion. And I think the second thing that's really interesting that you figured out is you noticed that the conclusions of your mind are shaped by your emotional state. So
Hmm.
literally, like the way that your mind functions changes if you're feeling an emotion.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that their logic is like separate, or how much they care about something is separate from their emotion.
Hmm.
But those, even how attached you are to things, like
Yeah.
how much something matters to you, is going to depend on your emotional state.
Hmm. Yeah. Makes sense.
So it's really interesting how you've figured that stuff out. It's cool.
Accidental.
Cool. So let me see if there's any other direction of questions.
Sure.
Do y'all do any particular things to support yourselves through like tough situations?
I don't know anything specific. Nothing like that I can think of. Just having people that when you're in a tough situation too that you trust with everything that you can talk to is nice. I think that's super good. I think most people don't have that. So it's like if I'm going through like if I was going through anything, I would probably talk to them about it. So I think that, but nothing like no specific like
Methods.
mechanism. Yeah, methods or
Yeah, so I'm
mechanism.
I'm hearing that you guys have like a language that y'all use, and that there's just a lot of trust.
Yeah.
right? And you all have like some practice at conflict resolution. I think trust is really the main thing because I think it helps you put things like conflict into context.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, like this is just, are we ready to negotiate or whatever? So that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we covered a lot of questions that people have. Any kind of last thoughts or questions from your end?
Oh no, I really appreciate you talking to me. It was a lot of fun. I like thinking things out and talking about them because I think a lot of things like emotions and friendships and whatever has a lot of like logic behind it, and if you can think it out, it's beneficial. So it's fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think what I really enjoyed about this conversation, it was a little bit different from what we usually do, but I really like
what do you usually do? I don't know. I haven't seen too many.
So good. So sometimes people will have a particular like question or like they'll have something that they want to learn more about. So or they'll have a challenge or a problem of some kind. So if there's something like that, then we'll kind of dig into that. Today, I thought it was just interesting because in the absence of that, there's still a lot to learn. Like, I think you can have a useful conversation. And like the last time I talked to, maybe not the last time, like 2 times ago when I talked to Ludwig, for example, like we just had a conversation about like death and like what happens after death. Like, what do you think happens? So like, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
So that was one of my favorite conversations. I think that what I kind of latched onto here, what was the most interesting to me was this angle of, there were 3 people who randomly started making content, let's say, and all 3 of y'all ended up pretty successful. And so the question is like, what can we understand about that dynamic?
Yeah.
So that's just what I was interested in, and the way that you approach things, the way that you even approach conflict, the way that you understand yourself, the way that you made decisions. I think, as you said, you're a logical person, and like I see that through and through. Even in terms of, okay, we're gonna have a part-time job, or maybe it wasn't part-time. We're gonna have a job. We're gonna have, we're gonna go to college, and we're gonna start this YouTube thing.
Yeah.
And then like we're gonna wait, and it sounds like your parents didn't take convincing, and so you're very, very methodical with like the way that you approach things. Nothing seems, I mean, but also there's a balance of like inspiration, right? So you're also not like overly robotic. Like you recognize that there's spontaneity, that there's like you gotta strike the iron while it's hot. You gotta get excited about things. So I'm noticing a really, really solid balance of like analysis and like creativity, fun, and inspiration.
Trying to keep balance.
Yeah. Right. And it sounds like you don't let you don't have failures, you have setbacks, right? There's like room to grow, and that there's a lot of trust, and you guys like support each other really well. So I think it's cool to kind of get a script for maybe what a successful group of content creators like looks like. Because people will like collab all the time, and then drama happens and shit happens, and
it's no fun.
And I think it goes back to this thing that you were saying earlier about you guys became really close friends before y'all were content creators. So now that trust, there isn't that voice in the back of your mind, which, by the way, I think that you can get over that to a certain degree if you're interested in it. I don't know that you need to, but
Part 2.
Yeah, right. So then you could tunnel down further into like, why is it hard for me to trust people in the same way? And part of that is just practical because that's y'all are in the business of friendship. So
yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming today, man.
Thank you for inviting me. It was great.
Yeah. Take care, man.
Awesome. You too.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was interesting. It's interesting. We like I don't think we do a good job sometimes like on this channel of exploring wins. So like even if you look at like where people post and stuff like that, the challenges and the tiers get so much more screen time than the W's. And like this is a huge problem. So like I want to tell y'all something that I found incredibly interesting. So, oftentimes when we're trying to solve our problems in life, we try to solve our problems, right? So if I'm struggling with something, the antidote is to fix what is broken. But there's a really interesting scientific principle called positive deviance. And we've talked about this a little bit before. I think it's very, very interesting what positive deviance is capable of. So I'll give you all kind of a quick story about positive deviance. I've told it before. So Positive Deviance is actually a book that I think was published in maybe 2010 or so. So maybe a couple of years earlier, actually, maybe 2003. There was a group of doctors who were doing NGO work, non-governmental organization work, and they were tasked with fixing malnourishment in rural Vietnam. So there was basically like a community where like children were malnourished, right? So that they're going to go and they travel from, I think, France. They go to Vietnam to try to fix malnourishment. They get a grant. And their plan is to, like, if you've got malnourished kids, like, what do? You feed them, right? That's how you fix. Like, if you're malnourished, you got to eat. Like, simple. So they get this grant. They get a lot of this food aid. They go to Vietnam. And then they discover that, like, the food aid never got there. So, like, the government officials there are like, we're incredibly sorry, but there's no food. And so it turns out that there's some degree of corruption or something like that. And so the government is like, we're sorry, we know you took 6 months off to come and fix this problem. Please try to fix it, but we can't give you any money. What we can give you is a translator, a van, and a place to stay. True story. I may have a couple of the details wrong, but I heard the story from this person. So then what they do is they go into the rural areas of Vietnam, and they find that 50% of the kids are malnourished. Right? And this is terrible. Like 50% malnourishment is like, that's such a high level of malnourishment. And so they were like, well, we don't know how to solve this problem because we don't have any food. So like, what do we do? So then they had this crazy thought. They said, well, hold on a second. All of these people are basically in the same socioeconomic status. They're all rice farmers, right? This is a rural part where basically everyone's a farmer. Why isn't it that 100% of the children are malnourished? Half of the families are somehow preventing malnourishment. And so what they discovered was something very simple, that everyone's a rice farmer, and people have these aprons that they go, and when they're tending their fields, there are two things that people who are not malnourished do. The first is that there are various kinds of crustaceans, clams, shrimp, and other kinds of things like that are in the rice paddies. And so some people, when they find one of these like little shrimp or whatever, they'll scoop it up and stick it in their apron. The second thing is that there's a kind of weed that grows in the rice paddy, which is very nutritious. It's very similar, if y'all are familiar with things like mustard greens or collard greens. These are considered poor people food. So most people will throw them away, but half of the people are eating them. And the reason that they throw them away is that it's poor people food, right? So we don't eat poor people food. So what they sort of figured out is that if you look in a system, instead of fixing the problem, one thing that you can do is duplicate the solution. So instead of trying to fix, trying to solve, okay, why are these people malnourished? You can ask a slightly different question, which is, why isn't everyone malnourished? This is the principle of positive deviance. And so we've used this a lot in terms of the way that we make content. So even like some of our approaches to content, part of the reason that we're pretty successful at helping content creators is because we used positive deviance. So we don't ask people, what is it that causes your burnout? We'll ask that too. But what we'll really ask people is, when you made this really successful video, what was going on inside you? Let's duplicate your successes. Let's focus on duplicating your successes as opposed to fixing your failures. So even working as an addiction psychiatrist, a lot of times we'll focus on the relapse. What happened when you relapsed? What went wrong? What were you feeling? Then what happened? Where did you go? Who did you talk to? What we don't ask is, how were you able to stay sober between months 2 and 3? Right? So if you sort of think about it, when someone comes into your office after relapse, they'll say, I screwed up. Everything went wrong. I made the same damn mistake again. I want to stop making this mistake. Instead, sometimes what we can do is we can ask them, well, let's forget about the mistake that you made. How did you not make the mistake 1 month ago? What happened then? So in our human minds, we have this very interesting bias, which is that we're biased towards the negative. Okay? So this is a survival thing, by the way. So one of the things that we sort of figured out is, if you're drinking from like a watering hole and one day you get sick, From an evolutionary standpoint, you want to avoid that watering hole, even if it was fine the first 90 days you drank from it. If you got sick on day 91, you'll avoid it. So organisms that didn't avoid the bad outcome ended up getting food poisoning again and again and again, didn't lead to a survival benefit. So we literally will weight negative more than positive. We also see this weighting of the negative in things like gambling and other kinds of like neuroeconomical studies. So if I tell you, okay, there's a 100% chance that you get $100 or a 51% chance that you get $200, which one do you want? Most human beings will take the guaranteed 100%, even though there is technically more money to be made at a 51% chance. So we weigh negatives in our mind more important than positives. This creates a huge bias in our problem solving and decision making because we're constantly trying to fix our problems. And if you look at like people who ask questions and post, right? Most people will ask questions about how to fix something that is broken. So the really interesting thing is that people have done studies on positive deviance and found that if you want to be successful in life, don't try to fix your problems. Try to duplicate your solutions. It is a subtle but very important difference. Why is this just being discovered after thousands of years of like humans being on this planet? It is because of this bias towards the negative, right? So our brains will ignore our successes. So another great example of this is there's a guy named Seb who's a pro Dota player. And I loved, he made a blog after he won the international many years ago. Now it's been many years ago. And it's really interesting because, you know, a lot of times when you look at esports, they'll kind of say like, oh, like this player is the weakest link. So we need to replace this player because they're the weakest link. And in Seb's blog, he kind of talks about how he views things differently. He doesn't look at someone who is the weakest link because they're underperforming. He looks at the height of their performance and says, this is what this person is capable of. How do we duplicate this consistently? Because if you really think about what you're capable of, everyone looks at, oh, I don't have friends, or I don't have many friends, or, you know, I haven't had a date in some amount of time. But if you did it once, you can do it again. And your focus should be on duplicating it. And especially in our society, we don't focus on this, right? But is there this concept that I was sort of sharing with Sapnap about, like, people have done studies on this, not in content creators, but like what I'm literally talking about is like I took a class my first class at Harvard Business School was on this class called value-based healthcare. And what we looked at was these, like, there's this place called the Martini Clinic in Germany. So we would do case studies on things that were exceptionally successful and try to understand what is someone who is exceptionally successful doing. So we'll do this a lot, right? There's all these like podcast bro kind of circuits, which we've been on and we're grateful. Like we love that stuff. But it's kind of like, let's talk to successful people about how they're successful. The challenge with positive, the shortcoming of that is that they are not you, right? So we can look at like Sapnap's life and we can say, wow, I need a group of 2 friends. We need to develop our own vocabulary. We need to do all this kind of stuff. But the problem is that, like, y'all don't have Sapnap's brain. Sapnap's brain is very special. He's very logical. He can be angry for 10 minutes and he's like, I'm done with that now. Let me see if I'm anxious tomorrow. Right? So a lot of us can't do that. So this is where positive deviance really comes in. So there is a problem of, this is another research concept called external validity. The problem with some research studies is that you can have some finding within a research study, but when you put it in the real world, it doesn't work. Best example of this, or my favorite example, is this medication called olanzapine. So olanzapine is a really good medication for bipolar disorder, works really, really, really well. The problem is that despite it being so effective for bipolar disorder, when you try to give it to people in the real world, they don't keep taking it. So in this research study, you've got, like, let's say 2,000 people, and these people are being compensated to take this medication. So they take medication every day. You know, people checking up on them. Did you take the medication? Did you not take the medication? They track their pills. They test their blood levels. They test the level of medication in your blood to make sure you're not lying. So when all this stuff is going on, people take the medication. The problem is in the study and in the real world, it causes you to gain 50 pounds, sometimes in worst case scenarios. So what happens is that even though this result happened within a controlled study, when you extrapolate it to the real world, people don't take the medicine. This same thing is true when it comes to success. So we have all these people who are interviewing very successful people. Like today, we talked to Sapnap, who is very successful. And we tried to figure out what are the secrets to your success. This is going to have an external validity problem because his solutions are based on his environment. Right? They assume his brain. They assume his upbringing. They assume his Greek dad. They assume that your two best friends are very successful content creators who you get along with, who you met before you were a content creator. So then there is a problem of external validity because translating what he does is not going to work for you 100%. So then the answer is then what do I do? Positive deviance. You look at the most successful moments in your life and you duplicate those. This is critical. Right? So if y'all are struggling with something, how do I make friends? The answer is how did you make friends? How do I find motivation? How did you find motivation? But you'll say, but I haven't had a friend in 6 years. That doesn't matter. Still, 6 years ago, what was different about you? Well, shit, I wasn't like ground down by this world. I was more optimistic. I was more authentic. I was less ashamed of myself. Well, that's really interesting. Right? Because as you become those things again, you will make friends again. Become the person that you were. That is how you can harness positive deviance. I see this a lot also in my patients with ADHD where they're like, I had this 1 week where everything went right. And then the question isn't, how do we fix the bad weeks? The question is, what was going on that week? How were you sleeping? How were you eating? Who were you spending time with? What was your environment? Right? And we'll see all kinds of different things. And so if y'all are stuck somewhere in life, two really common things that people do wrong. First is they look for a solution to their problems. Don't look for a solution outside of yourself. Second thing is that they look to other people, right? There's a difference between, I got garbled those, so I'll try that again. So the two things that people do wrong, the first is that they try to fix their problems instead of duplicating their successes. So look at the times that you have already done well because that assumes your brain. That assumes your circumstance. You're you. So duplicate, recreate the best version of yourself. Don't try to make some hypothetical version. And the second thing is be careful about the solutions of other people. Right? And if you kind of look at this, there's a bazillion channels on the internet telling you this is how to be successful. We don't tell you how to be successful. We teach you the principles of how you work. You decide how to do that. Right? So even now, I'm not saying, I'm teaching y'all about the principle of positive deviance. I'm not saying that this is the one way to apply it. Right? This is a principle, and then you have to decide for yourself. There may be an external validity problem here as well, whereas you try to do positive deviance, you look at yourself and you say, there's no successes in my life, positive deviance wouldn't work for me. Right? And then what we need to do is go learn about cognitive bias, trauma, and all that other good stuff. Right? There's other problems. So if y'all are really struggling, it's like crazy, but the solution is sitting right in front of you. So another really interesting principle of positive deviance is they believe that in the book they talk about how innovation is unnecessary. Think about this for a second. They said you don't need to make something new. You never need to innovate. The innovations already exist. They just need to be duplicated. If you have had one great day in your life, you don't need to solve all your problems. All you need to do is think about what led to that day and do your best to recreate the situation. And practice that over and over and over again, and you will find positive deviance is very successful. So we arguably have a successful content creation operation, right? And it is an operation. There's 15 people at a minimum that are involved. It's not just me. We have a great team here. And so we've even learned some things that are very, very counterintuitive. And the reason that we learn things that are counterintuitive, first of all, it's responsible for our growth. And secondly, it's like not what the common wisdom is. And a great example is when you have one successful video, you duplicate it a second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time, right? You make derivative content. We don't like doing that. So instead, what we try to do, and so maybe that's the reason we're less successful than we are, because we don't just make the same shit over and over and over again. Personally, I find it boring. But what we also found is that what it is that inspires that best video is the same thing, that you want to duplicate the inspiration, not the output. So even in your own life, when you're kind of like looking at positive deviance, if you're saying, I had a great day of motivation, right? I got so much done. What people will try to do is they will duplicate the output. They'll say, I need to be disciplined because I need to do this every day. But you weren't disciplined on that first day. You were inspired on that first day. So then what happens, I want you to really think about this. This is how crazy this is. You had one really successful day that had nothing to do with discipline, and you're like, now I need discipline. And you're trying to recreate that experience by moving in the exact opposite direction. It's crazy. You don't need discipline. You need a duplication of inspiration on a consistent basis. That is not discipline. It's the opposite. Discipline is about the absence of inspiration. And when you guys may be like, wait, what? But yeah, I want y'all, like, artists are actually really good at this, right? So when you have an artist, they sort of really figure out, like really successful artists will figure out their process of tapping into creativity. And so don't try to create yourself into something that you aren't. Instead, recognize that within your 365 days of 1 year, there are bright points. Understand what was happening during those bright points and duplicate them. So many years ago, I went to college and I was so excited. I was going to go to college and I was going to do so much. So I joined a fraternity. I ran for student government. Right, I made a bunch of friends. I went to a bunch of parties. I took Japanese and Spanish. Failed them both. Right, I took a philosophy class. I took a chemistry class. I was gonna like learn everything. I was gonna party a bunch. I was gonna be active in student government. I was gonna do everything. And then none of it worked. I didn't win the election. I got kicked out. I got impeached from one position that I was elected to. Failed a bunch of classes. Had a string of, I don't even think you can call them relationships. Terrible experiences in the fraternity world. Great experiences too. Right? And it was like, and so then my dad was like, you're trying to do too much. You got to do less. So I was like, okay. He's like, you need to focus on one thing. And I was like, okay, fine. So then I cut out a lot of extracurriculars. And then my first semester of my second year, I still did really bad. So then what I did, I was like, okay, I need to focus more, right? So then I even took a half course load. I only took like 3 classes, light classes. And then I still didn't do great. I was like, this is not working. So first I was doing too much, then I was doing a normal amount, and then I was doing less than a normal amount. The results were the same. So I go to India. And one person who's at one of the monasteries that I'm at, who's an Ayurvedic physician, hears this story and then he laughs. And he says, this is a terrible idea for you. Focusing is such a bad idea. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, the way that your personality is, you get easily excited by things. But then you get overly excited and you struggle with follow through. So he kind of teaches me this technique, which I've mentioned a couple of times. He's like, you need a lot of stimulation. The main thing is, instead of like doing 1,000 random things, you will get bored of thing number 1, and then you go to thing number 2. You get bored of thing number 2, then you go to thing number 3. When you are bored of thing number 3, don't go to thing number 4. You will be interested in thing number 1 again. It's like you have a cool down. Like, so this is basically what he taught me, is that inspiration, motivation, and interest have an internal cool down. And it's like, I'm hyped about this. And then you have to wait a couple of days before you can do it again. So we all have this different set of cooldown. And people who are highly disciplined, They have a very short cooldown, so they can get interested in something or be disciplined or whatever. Like their stats are different. Their build is different. And so what we really want to do, what I really learned, is that I'm going to lean into my natural cognitive fingerprint. I'm going to do a lot of different things. I'm going to see patients. I'm going to make content. I'm going to do some writing. I'm going to go give a talk. I'm going to run a workshop. I'm going to do some teaching. I'm going to consult. All right, we're going to do something that we have been done some of before, but we're going to do it more hopefully next week. Stay tuned to our socials and y'all will see. All right, we're going to try to do a lot of different things. This is positive deviance. Lean into the person that you are instead of trying to become someone else. And what you will find is the big difference between me back then and me now is just understanding how the instrument works. Right? So this pen can't write anything, no matter how hard I try, until I click this one button. And once I click this button, all of the same effort now produces. Without clicking this button, all of the effort produces nothing. The instrument is the same. And if you learn how to use it, if you learn what this button is, the big difference between old Dr. K and now Dr. K, that was all oak, and now Dr. K, still all oaks, still the same pen. I just learned how to click one button. And if you want to know what that button is for you, positive deviance is the answer. From 1 to 10, how disciplined of a person I am, I would give myself... Realistically, I would answer probably like a 6, but in my heart of hearts, I think it's a 4. Like, I'm honestly like a 4. But I don't think you can... I think the outcomes that I've achieved are not consistent with a rating of 4. So I'd say it's probably a 6. You did med school with a 4? You're damn right I did. So this is like I did a lecture about this a while ago. So like I had all these friends who would like study a lot, and I was like, I can't do that. I wasn't disciplined enough. So I studied 2 hours a day in med school. That's it. Like people were putting in like 8 hours a day, and I was like, I can't do that. I tried for a little while, didn't go well. So it took me a while. I did the same thing. So it's interesting. I didn't get, I ended up getting like 2 awards in med school, but when I didn't get like the honor society, because early on in med school, when I started my 3rd year, I didn't know how to function on the wards. So when I was doing clinical work, like I ended up really strong and then, did good in residency and all that kind of stuff. But it took me a while because I tried to do what everybody else was doing. And it took me a while to really understand like what it means, like how to bring the best out of myself. And I saw everyone around me working really hard. That's not what worked for me. I wasn't disciplined. I focused on inspiration. How can I get interested in this person? How can I get interested in this person? How can I get interested in this person? What am I naturally interested in? This is also how, so when I went to med school, I was planning on becoming an oncologist, cancer doctor. So first 3.5 years were all geared towards becoming a cancer doctor. I did research in internal medicine, like did a bunch of stuff that was related to like this different path. So what happened is I realized that's not what I enjoy. That's not what inspires me. That sitting in front of a computer for 12 hours a day was not something I found enjoyable. Talking to people was, right? Leaning into inspiration. And so understand that you are a completely unique organism. And you think, oh, I wish I was this way. I wish I was this way. I wish I was this way. And sure, like over time you can grow and change, fine. But the fundamentals of who you are is not something that you should change. It's very difficult to change, and it's not worth it to change. Right? This is like someone like, so half of y'all are archers that are walking into melee. Right? And you're like, my DPS sucks. And it's like, yeah, that's because you're meleeing with a bow. You should be shooting an arrow. Right? So much effort for so little yield. And what I see in this community is a ton of inefficiency. It's not a lack of discipline. It's not even a lack of motivation. It is a community of people who are pushing themselves to be what they are not. Burnout. Right? It's like, start leaning into the person that you are. And there's a whole different issue of if you have a false perception or what you think is a correct perception of yourself, right? Like that needs to be worked on too. That's why we build some of the resources that we build, even things like the trauma guide, which is out now, by the way, is all about developing identity and how you can shape your identity, how you can see yourself as you are. We also have stuff in there like what Sapnap was talking about, he's like 10 minutes later, I'm not angry anymore. So we have a lot of stuff in there about emotional regulation and emotional rewiring, right? So we've sort of figured out a lot of these like things or what we think is successful, and it's my opinion on what's successful. I've seen a lot of clinical efficacy of this stuff. We've seen this in our community with some of these community events like Right in the Feels, right? And then the more of this that we do, like the better off it is for people. So if y'all are interested in some of these aspects, we have a lot of resources. But I mean, I think it's a real tragedy, right? Because you're a unique character. You've got a character sheet, you've got your stats, you've got your background. Lean into that. And it's like a great example, last example I'll share with y'all, which is something I talk about a lot, right? So like here, I'm very open about how much I suck at things. Like I failed a lot. And I ended up doing okay. And so there was a time in my life where I wished I had not failed. I was like, man, I've got like the second year I was applying to, the third year I was preparing my applications for med school. I was like, if only I did not have a 2.5 GPA. If only I had a 4.0. I regretted and I wished I was someone else. I wished I had a past that was different. But now it's like, this is what allows me to talk to y'all, right? So if I was one of the 4.0 kids, like, I'm not one of us. Like, we're not the 4.0 kids. Maybe some of y'all are. I make assumptions about who our community is. Our community has grown so much, and we have so many people who are just at the top of their game. Or y'all are welcome here too, right? They struggle as well, but we have people who are, developers at FANG companies and CEOs and all kinds of other, very, very successful people who are very driven. That's us too. We're all of the above, right? And that's the point. Is like, it's not like the winners and the losers are two groups of people. We're all the same. And it's just learning about yourself is ultimately what's going to help you become more successful. So I work with people who are 25 years old and like, at home and don't have a job and stuff like that. And I work with people who are very successful. It's all the same. Just learn about yourself. That's how you're going to improve. Okay. As a highly creative person, I'm a copywriter. I found that I cannot create structure for my work. Any tips? Absolutely. So structure is frequently about, so I would say that you can first of all apply positive deviance. So look at the times in which you have been successful at writing and try to understand what were you doing at those times. The second thing is that being a copywriter and creating structure is very difficult. So a lot of times there are these jobs that can be done at any time. And if you have a job that is done at any time, it is very difficult to make structure. So if you look at it, you may think, oh, I'm worse at making structure than the people around me. That's not true. We're all equally bad. The big difference is that half of us have a job that creates structure for us. And in fact, if you look at our society, we actually induce atrophy of organizational skills in the society we live in today. We don't teach people how to make structure. We make it for them. We don't tell people to climb the stairs. We tell them to take the elevator. School starts at a particular time, ends at a particular time. You have a syllabus. You're told exactly what is on the test. You're given all the materials to study for the test. Everything is laid out for you. There's a format for resumes. There's this number of jobs. You have a career center. We have so many different resources that do not teach us how to structure our lives. They do the opposite. They structure for us. And if you have the double-edged sword of an overly involved parent who's not willing to let you make mistakes and does all the work for you, they've infantilized you even further. So if you're a copywriter, if you're a freelancer, if you're a programmer, if you're a writer, if your job is to produce something as opposed to be somewhere. See, being a doctor is not about producing somewhere, it's about showing up. My call shift starts at 6 p.m. on a Friday, it ends at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. My job is to show up. And a society looks at me as very productive because basically what I have to do is show up. But if you have a job that involves producing something, structure is very difficult. So first tip is environment. A different location will give you a different desire to work. So even recently, I was on a trip. I use public libraries a lot. I've always used public libraries, loved it. So I will go to the library and do my work there. It is easier to not get distracted at a public library. So depending on where you live, that may or may not be an option. Even when I was in med school, this is crazy. I didn't have too much money. So I didn't even have a gaming computer. So I had an old laptop. And the laptop, I didn't even want a gaming computer because then I would get distracted with games. So I still played games on the laptop. I used to play Heroes of Might and Magic 3, which can run on, not even a potato PC, like a potato skin PC. You don't even need the full potato. And so what I would do is I had 2 desks, and I would pick up the laptop and I would move it over there. And this was my gaming desk. This was my working desk. So I would have separate spaces in my tiny little, I had like a sleeping bag. I slept on the floor. I didn't have any furniture. I had 2 desks and a dresser. No chairs, no tables. And so that was it. No sofas, no couches, no TV, nothing like that. So everything happened on my entertainment laptop happened over there, and I would just shift the laptop. That helped a lot. So when I'm done with my work, I get to move the laptop. Things are way harder for y'all now because now we have everything on the phone, and the phone is your source of entertainment, it's your source of socialization, and it's your source of work. So environment is number 1. And environment also means your digital environment. So, for example, sometimes I'll advocate for the use of different logins on your computer, or even I do this thing where the fun apps are not easily accessible. So I have to open up the list of apps. I have to scroll through all of my apps to open up a fun app. So there's digital environment too is very important. Second thing that's very important if you have an unstructured life is to try to pair up with other people who are unstructured to create structure. This is why if you look at some of these traditions like being an author, authors thrive in writing groups, many of them. And why? It's because you don't have to write a chapter of the book a day. You don't have to. You can write 2 tomorrow. And then you can write 3 the next day. And then you can write 4 the next day. And now you're so far behind, you can't write 4 in a day. Now I'm going to beat myself up. And so how do I manage those emotions? I waste more time. So environment in terms of physicality, environment in terms of people. Right? This is very important. Oftentimes people who have their job as a product require an external swift kick in the ass to get you going. Right? You need someone to tell you, hey, I needed it a week ago. If you don't get it into me by end of day, you're fucking fired. That's what you rely on to get stuff done, is deadlines and consequences. So try to create external inputs. It's not that you need the deadline or the consequence. Any kind of external signal will trigger your motivation. You're externally motivated. That's actually okay. So all you need is more external triggers, and that comes from environment and community. The last thing that I would recommend is that you really focus on your morning routine. So oftentimes we really screw ourselves up by any kind of delay in the morning. Something as simple as hopping on your phone for 5 minutes really screws you up. And if y'all want to understand this, it has to do with our dopamine circuitry. So let's talk about this real quick. Okay. So something that people don't understand about dopamine. So give me a second, and then we'll wrap up. This is a great question. Nope. Nope. There we go. Something that people don't entirely understand about dopamine. So everyone's like, oh my God, like we need a dopamine detox and we need to do this. Okay, let's talk about dopamine for a second. So this is what I want y'all to understand. So when you wake up in the morning, you have a reserve of dopamine. Okay, now let's understand what dopamine is. Dopamine in the nucleus accumbens does three things. First thing it does is it gives us pleasure. Second thing it does is reinforce the behavior. Third thing it does is it creates a craving. So all three of these are the three outputs of dopamine. One signal of dopamine creates all three of these effects. You cannot untangle these. So now what happens is we have different things that will release different amounts of dopamine. So let's say I do cocaine. I inject cocaine or I snort cocaine. So what this does, the signal of cocaine is very powerful. So I get a super tight squeeze. I'm squeezing all of my dopamine circuits. And if I get a super tight squeeze, I empty out a lot of dopamine. So all my dopamine gets squeezed out and is out of here. So I get this burst of dopamine. Now, what does dopamine do? Now I have a huge dopamine signal. So what does this do to these three things? We get intense pleasure, intense reinforcement of the behavior, and intense craving. This is why people get addicted to cocaine. Now, if we look at something like video games are not quite as addictive as cocaine. So what that means is that I get only this amount of dopamine out. So instead of 3, let's make it 2. Right? So I get a little bit less dopamine out. I have some left. Okay? So this is not quite as addictive. Now, here's the key thing to understand. Now, the more that I squeeze out, the more empty it is. Right? So what this also means is that after I play video games, if I try to do work, there's very little dopamine left. So now I do a bunch of work. And, you know, work is rewarding, right? But it's not very rewarding. So it's just a tiny little squeeze. And since most of the dopamine is empty, I've already emptied it out through video games, I get very little dopamine signal. And then I get a tiny little, not even a full arrow. So my work feels less rewarding. I do not reinforce the behavior of work. And I do not crave, I do not want to work tomorrow because the dopamine signal is tiny. Now, here's the main thing to understand. If I wake up first thing in the morning and I get to work, my dopamine stores are full, which means even with a tiny little squeeze, I can still get a relatively large signal because everything is full. So the analogy that I like to use is think about a lemon. When a lemon is fresh, a small squeeze gets you a lot of juice. So if I work first thing in the morning, I get a solid arrow. I get more pleasure, I get more reinforcement, and I get more craving. For work, I get more of a reward. And then the beautiful thing is if I play video games, let's say I work another hour. Now I'm going to get rid of this, right? So now I've used up this much dopamine. Now I play a video game. So here's the coolest part. When you play a video game now, remember that the video game squeezes harder. And so even if you play a video game afterward, the squeeze is so solid that you get plenty of dopamine over here to enjoy gaming. Okay? So this is why you should, like, people get so confused. And they're like, I don't understand, like, how can I enjoy my work as much as I enjoy my gaming? And this is all you have to do is do the work first. So if you want to literally enjoy the work, do the work first, because then you'll get some degree of reward. That'll give you pleasure, and it will make you want to work again. And if you all have done this, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because chances are there are times in your life where you wake up one day and you're super productive and you're like, damn, son, I feel good. I want to do this tomorrow. I want to have another productive day. We all want productive days. Think about how does that work neuroscientifically? It's because on that productive day, you actually get a dopamine rush. Now, if we squeeze and when we wake up in the morning, our lemon is full. So a small squeeze, like doing something not very fun like work, still gets pleasure, craving, and behavioral reinforcement. And then, even though there's not much juice left in the lemon, if I do a dopaminergic activity like play a video game, now I'm squeezing hard and there's enough juice for me to enjoy myself. Now, for those of you who work to the point of burnout, what you will find is that even video games are not fun because everything is empty. So even squeezing really hard and playing some very addictive video game just doesn't feel fun. Nothing left. And by the way, this is also why games get less fun over time. So when I first play for the first hour, it's so much fun. Second hour, third hour, fourth hour, I'm running out of juice in the lemon. So the biggest mistake that we make is we do high dopaminergic activities first, and then we have nothing left in the tank for when we sit down to work. Flip it around, it'll make a world of difference. You don't want to detox off of dopamine. You want to utilize dopamine. Everyone's like, oh, I don't, dopamine's bad. Dopamine, what the fuck? Dopamine is your source of behavioral reinforcement and craving. We want to utilize those to create our motivation. Dopamine is such a strong motivator. The problem is that we're engaging in behaviors that are literally creating reinforcement, behavioral reinforcement, and cravings in the wrong direction. And then we struggle because this work is not fun because every time I do it, I'm out of dopamine, so there's no reinforcement. And games are fun because there's a ton of reinforcement. And like, we're literally shaping our brain to move in this direction instead of move in this direction because we don't understand how our brain works. So if you are someone who is a freelancer, do not do anything dopaminergic until you work for a couple of hours, come hell or high water. It is not just about today. Understand this mechanism. Understand that if you do that, you are making things exponentially harder for yourself tomorrow, the next day, and for the next week. It's not just 15 minutes on your phone before you get started. It is 15 minutes today, an increase in craving tomorrow. Less reward from your work today. More difficulty with motivation today. That's the real price of even 15 minutes on your phone. Because then what happens is as we empty our lemon, in order to get what we need, we have to do high squeezes. Now the lemon is empty, so now I need to play video games. Now I need to watch pornography. Now I need to use drugs. So then the only way that you can feel something is by like doing extreme things. And then people will say, I don't enjoy reading books. I've never enjoyed reading books. I can't enjoy reading books anymore. That's because the dopaminergic squeeze is less. But it feels really good to finish a book. And if you've really fallen into a book and you finish it, man, you want to read another one. It's interesting how it works, right? If you pay attention to your life, you will find that all these things are true. And if they're not, then I'm wrong. Or you're different. One of the two. Which is still useful information. Okay? I also use medical cannabis for creativity as a video editor. It's beneficial to be overwhelmed by my work, so I'm completely empathetic to your situation as a copywriter. Yeah, so like we'll see all this, right? Where people will start using different kinds of substances to alter their function. It brings out the best in them. Caffeine is number one. So caffeine becomes more and more useful the more insomnia you have. Right? So this is something that we really have to understand about substances, is that there's a risk benefit. We'll also use medical cannabis. So we'll prescribe these things, right? I will prescribe things like opiate medications and stuff like that, even cannabis. There are times that warrant for it, but this is very important to understand. The substances are, generally speaking, not the ideal. If you, like, when do we prescribe sleep medication? When someone struggles with insomnia. They're not, the right answer is fixing the insomnia. The right answer is getting a good night's sleep. That's the best antidote to caffeine. So a lot of these interventions can be very useful. So like my favorite, I think one of the best outcomes for medical cannabis is in reducing opioid dependence. When someone is so dependent on opioids, giving them cannabis has been shown to reduce their opioid burden. Seems like a really good move because of very high dose opioids have all kinds of problems. So there are good reasons to use some of this stuff. But there's a big difference between what compensates for unhealthiness today that moves you in the right direction and what is healthy, right? So if this is the spectrum, let's say this is positive 100, this is negative 100. So if I'm over here and I move this way, that's like positive, right? So that's good. But then what gets me from here to here may not get me from here to here. So sometimes, especially if we look at things like psychoactive substances, they're really good at helping with pathology, but then if you use them, like let's take cannabis as an example. So cannabis may be useful at reducing your opioid dependence, but if you're super, super functional and you start using cannabis, you could lose ground. The same is true for things like SSRIs. It depends on the person, right? So I think in general, cannabis is worse that way than SSRIs, but jury's out on that one. Right? There are a lot of people like Mark Horowitz is very anti-SSRI. So like, fair enough. We don't have a clear answer on what's right and what's wrong. Right? But there's a big difference between using a crutch and it's like a crutch will help you if you have a broken leg, but it's going to slow you down if you're healthy. And that's what we see with a lot of psychoactive substances. So, I think it makes sense that people use them and at the same time recognize that what moves you from negative 100 to 0 may be a different thing from what moves you from 0 to 100. So thank you all very much for, posting in. Right? So someone saying, yeah, medical cannabis for OCD, like I haven't seen studies on that specifically, but makes sense. So what about going for a walk? So generally speaking, I think going for a walk is really good. So we're not saying that you shouldn't get any stimulation, but y'all have to understand that there's a big difference between like the dopamine death grip of things like short form content on the internet and like cat videos and like rage bait. There's a big difference between that and going for a walk. So if you look specifically at going for a walk can be very healthy. So let's just like talk about a couple of these things. So the first is that going for a walk improves cerebral blood flow. So this is interesting, but when I was in med school, they said that the calves, right, our calf muscles, are considered the second heart. And why? It's because the heart is responsible for pumping blood, and the second most important muscle, the heart is muscle, the second most important muscle for pumping blood is your calves. So every time this is beautiful how the body is designed. So we have these things called veins. And veins tend to be a low pressure system, which causes blood to pool. Okay? So this is why if you have like a risk of clotting, you'll get these things called deep vein thromboses in your legs when you go on flights. Because the blood pools in your lower extremities. So when the blood pools in your lower extremity, it increases your risk of clot. Not really a problem if you're young and healthy, but as you get older and depending on your medical conditions, you have to be careful about that. So what we tell people to do is make sure you walk around when you're on a plane or flex your muscles or whatever, because the blood pools down there because of gravity. So what is it that causes blood to push up your calf muscles? So every time your calf muscle contracts, inside is a vein full of blood, and it pushes the blood back up. So walking is very good for cerebral blood flow in general. Right? So once your blood starts moving, you clear things out. You will also do things to your lymphatic flow, and all kinds of stuff changes. The second thing that's really good about a walk is that oftentimes when we walk, we have idle time in our mind. And then idle time in the mind is very important. So our brain has evolved with idle time. So it utilizes the idle time very productively. When the brain is like, okay, we're not thinking about anything right now, we're not doing anything right now, what we'll find is it does things like subconscious emotional processing. You will work through things in your mind. It's not even conscious. You'll think about this, you'll think about that. Oh, I have to do this. Oh, I have to do this. It just kind of calms you down a little bit. Also activates your physiology in a different kind of way. So walking can be very good. Now, if you're in a city that's very loud and stuff, I'm not quite sure about that. So I don't know, depending on who you are, what your personal preferences are, how stimulating the city is, there may be a net positive or net negative. I'm not quite sure. But generally speaking, walking is very good. So oftentimes my personal approach to things is I'll get to work right away. And then around 10 or 11, after 2 to 3 hours of work, I will go for a walk. So I'll try to use a walk to kind of consolidate my memory. So once I have some stuff to think through, then I'll consolidate. So as an example, before I give a lecture and before I stream, I try to take a walk. So literally what I'll do is I'll go through all my research and I'll look at my notes and I'll write things out and stuff like that. And then I go for a walk, and then I think through the lecture in my head. So it's a way of basically repetition and reinforcement. So walking, idle time in the brain is very important. Great questions. Great comments. If you haven't used any substances and don't need them, great. Does it matter to walk with music or just to be in my own thoughts? So I recommend walking without any external stimulus. So I do not recommend podcasts or music or things like that. Your mileage may vary. So some people have brains that music can be quite calming and it helps them think actually more clearly. If your brain is like that, then go for it. So some amount of experimentation, but I tend to find that just really letting my thoughts run wild is really good. Okay. This is a great question. What do I do after I get rejected? Do I just leave or do I keep talking? So see, we're going to touch on this real quick and then we gotta go. But see, when we think about rejection, the first thing you got to do is be a little bit less black and white. So oftentimes there's a couple of the answer is I think the problem we oftentimes make in life is that we create a false dichotomy where we think it's either this or this. After rejection, do I stay and keep talking or do I just leave? So there are so many problems with this construction. I'm not saying that this person is wrong to think this way, but if you're someone who's in this situation where you got rejected and you're like, what do I do? Take a step back, take a deep breath. First of all, recognize what is the nature of your rejection. Because oftentimes if you look at people who have been rejected, or if you have someone in your life that you have rejected, there's oftentimes a lot more nuance coming from you. But the other person is like, okay, fine, you don't want me to come to your birthday party? I'll never talk to you again. And it's like, no, I didn't say that, right? It's just that there are some concerns that I have or whatever. So you'll see this a lot if you've got like parents who are narcissistic or borderline, like they perceive things as rejection. So I'm not saying that you weren't rejected. You can absolutely be rejected, but be a little bit careful. At least get into the habit of being critical of your perception of rejection. Now, people will rebel against this. They'll be like, no, this is what happened. Like the person said, no, fuck you. What do you mean? Like, I definitely got rejected. Fair enough in this particular case. But let's think this through for a second. In this particular case, you're right. But imagine a scenario in which you perceive a rejection and there isn't a rejection. Imagine what your life is like. Imagine how it would be different if half of the rejections that you perceive don't really exist. And you're living in this world of manufactured rejection. Now, I mean, I'm sure that the rejections are real to a certain extent. I'm not saying that you're wrong because I have no idea who you are or what your situation is. All I'm pointing out is that being critical of your perceptions, especially your negative emotional perceptions, is incredibly valuable. I'm ashamed of myself. Well, let's be critical of that. I'm worried about this thing happening. Just because you're worried about it happening doesn't mean that it is going to happen or that the doomsday scenario you're manufacturing is reliable or likely. You'll understand that? So we want to be critical of our negative perceptions. I'm so pissed because this person is so mean. And we know that negative emotions can be triggered inappropriately based on things like traumatic experiences in our past. So literally, if we look at evidence-based interventions for negative emotion, questioning your perception is a huge part of it. So the first thing is, if you've been rejected, hold on a second. Let's really think through how hard you got rejected. It's a skill to level up, even if you're right in this case. The second thing is it's not either or. Right? So what we want to do is try to come up with at least one option C. We're not trying to tell you that you have to do option C, but come up with at least a third thing. And oftentimes what you find is black and white thinking is driven by emotion. So things feel more black and white when you're emotionally active. Like, do I stay? Wow, this hair is really... Okay. We good now? Okay. It is really kind of... Black and white thinking is driven by negative emotion. Do I keep talking? Well, no. Like, I would say, like, you know, I don't know if you should keep talking if you got rejected. I would say probably not. But you also don't have to leave. Right? Hey, I understand that this is not really moving in a romantic direction. I'm interested in meeting new people. Can you introduce me to some of your friends? Why don't you do that? Right? Why does it have to be one or the other? Well, it hurts to see them. Fair enough. So if continued exposure to them is toxic for you, if you can't move past it, then don't talk to them again. Fine. Say, hey, I need some time. You know, start glazing for somebody else. And then say, hey, thank you for the time. I'd love to reconnect as friends. But now that your heart is with another, you're back to, you're golden again. Right? So you don't have to remove them from your life. Feelings can come and they can go. You have to decide kind of what's right for you. But I don't think based on the rejection, I don't think you should keep trying, first of all. But like, you don't have to leave, right? There's like all kinds of neutral positions that you can adopt. And sometimes those are not good to do. Fair enough. But like, don't default towards one or the other. Right? So too often what happens in life is when we get rejected, we're like, do I fight for love or do I fucking leave? And then you leave. And I think the problem with this is not in that particular situation, but look at how reactionary your life is. Like, you have to be able to walk a middle path. Like, life is great when you can walk a middle path. It's very turbulent if you're walking in extremes. All or nothing, all or nothing, all or nothing. Right? So be able to walk a middle path. That is a skill that is very useful. I had a bad thing happen at work. Should I quit or should I try to make it work? Well, just chill a little bit, right? Have rotations of the order. Give it a shot. Everything isn't over yet. So be careful about that. And so if we look at some of these philosophies like Stoicism or Vairagya from yoga, these are about detachment. They're about neutrality. They're about not overreacting to things and sort of staying balanced. And so that's what I would advocate for more than anything else. And once you operate from a balanced place, then you can make a decision. You can objectively decide, you know what, having this person in my life is not good for my mental. This has nothing to do with the rejection. They can accept you, and they can still be bad for you, right? So you want to be operating from a balanced perspective, not one where you're, oh my God, you're like into it or you're not into it based on what they do. What that sort of means is that you are living your life reactively. If they say yes, you're there. And if they say no, you're gone. Right? There's a certain practicality. You can't date someone without their consent. But like in general, just be careful about what I'm asking y'all to do is really think about the pattern of your thinking. And how this is a really good example of like something that we do in other parts of our life too, with jobs, with friends, with parents, with getting invited to this, not getting invited to this. In video games, oh my God, my mid-fed is 0-2. The game is fucking over. Black and white thinking. Right? So not every rejection has to be so drastic. Like I remember like I was fucking dumb back in the day. And so, you know, I asked this girl if she wanted to go to a party and she was like, I have a boyfriend. And then I was like, cool. Do you want to invite him? He's more than welcome. You know, it's like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, you know, like, that's cool. I'd love to meet the guy. Easy. All right? And they're like, oh, I'm like, if you ask someone on a date, they're like, I'm not interested in a relationship right now. Totally cool. Are you interested in hanging out as friends? Totally fine. Or, you know, I do find you attractive. So if at some point that changes, like, hit me up. You okay if I ping you like in a couple of weeks? Like, how do you want to play this? It's like, yeah, no, I think I just need to like be by myself for a little while. Totally cool. Get it. I hope whatever you're going through ends up working out, and I wish you all the best. Fine. Right? But you don't have to default to like responsive, like your default reactions. Does that make sense? Oh my God, Kit Boga raid. Welcome everybody. We're just wrapping up. But that's awful that we're wrapping up and y'all just showed up. So I think what we're going to have to do is raid somebody else. But I think just to make things fair to y'all, because y'all just got punted around, let's ask, we're going to take 2 questions from Kit Boga raiders. No. We gotta do y'all justice. So if you're a Kit Boga raider, you get to ask 2 questions. Or y'all as a collective group get to ask questions. We can't just abandon you after showing up. Oh no. Guest me, Dr. K, thanks for mailing me your book. If you are who I think you are, I hope you enjoyed the inscription. Okay. We're gonna do more than 2. We're gonna do 3. So question number 1 is, how are you doing? I'm doing well, but I'm a little bit tired and a little bit hungry. And then question number 2 is, ever heard of Updog? No. What's Updog? Of course, Kit Boga raiders are going to get me. Okay. the description still holds. Is it good? Okay. When is giving up / asking for help acceptable? What? Okay, so this question is crazy. We're going to answer this. When is giving up / asking for help acceptable? First of all, giving up and asking for help should not be a slash. Right? That's not the same thing. Okay? That's not the same thing at all. So problem number one is if you think giving up and asking for help are synonymous, this needs to be changed. Asking for help is completely acceptable before you start, while you are doing it, when you are having trouble, or even after it's done successfully. Asking for help is viable in all 4 scenarios. You should absolutely ask for help before you get started. You can also ask for help to optimize things along the way. You can even ask for help after you are successful. Hey, can you give me some feedback? This is what I thought went well. This is something that I struggled with. Can you help me with these things? Right? So asking for help should be a normal part of your day. Now, if that's hard for you because you're struggling with a lot of shame or you've been punished for asking for help. So most of the time, the reason that it's hard for people to ask for help is because we get punished for asking for help. And if that's been your experience, my condolences to you. We have a whole trauma guide about rewiring all that crap. So check that out. So that can sometimes happen. So just notice that the quick answer is just notice that I feel ashamed asking for help. And notice that shame. That does not mean, so this is the key thing about shame. Shame is a collection of thoughts and feelings in the mind. It is not a reality. Right? Just because you feel ashamed from something doesn't mean that something is shameful. So really good examples of this are like, sometimes when you look at people who have been assaulted, they will feel ashamed of themselves. But it's not your fault. Right? Usually. So just because our mind produces something doesn't mean that it's correct. Now, when should you give up? When you decide it's a good idea. So see, a lot of times giving up is emotional. What's even worse is not giving up is emotional. So everyone talks about, oh my God, if you give up, you're a loser. I've seen more psychological damage done by people who refuse to give up than people who give up. That may not even be true, but that's what it feels like in this moment. I'm just thinking about so many patients that I've seen that refuse to give up. And it's like, I don't want to be a loser, and losers give up. So I'm going to pursue this stupid thing. I'm going to invest way too much energy in a toxic relationship because the idea of being a quitter, I don't want to be a quitter. So I'm going to keep persisting in a bad strategy. So if y'all are struggling to figure out, should I give up or not? So I'd say the first thing is ask for help. Even in figuring out whether you should give up, always ask for help. Always a good thing. Almost always a good thing. There's some extreme scenarios where asking for help can be like a consequence of stuff like, let me think. Right? So if you become like very dependent on someone, or you have severe confidence issues and you need to learn how to like do things on your own, or you lack faith in yourself and you don't need help. So there are like dependent scenarios where asking for help is not ideal, but generally speaking, it's good. Now, in terms of when to give up, when your mind is clear and you analyze the situation and then you decide. So a clear mind, then the question becomes, how do you achieve a clear mind? The first thing is spend time with yourself, spend time in nature. So get out, don't spend time on your phone. That's not real thinking. So I would even take a whole day if you can, or a couple of hours. I get a lot of clarity through solitude. And your mind, give your mind time to process. Second thing is morning is wiser than evening. So if you're trying to make a decision, this is something that I first read in, it's something from Russian fairy tales where they always say, like in Vasilisa fairy tales, they'll say that, morning is wiser than evening, which I find to be true. I read it in a fairy tale. I don't know what the science of it is. There's all kinds of stuff with cortisol and circadian rhythm. There's probably something, now that I think about it, there's probably something with a lot of emotional processing and memory consolidation that happens in sleep. Generally speaking, we wake up feeling fresh. Not always. Sometimes we wake up with our minds 1,000 miles a minute. Different mechanism. So try to spend some time by yourself, go to sleep, wake up, and look at the situation. And on balance, try to decide if this is a good idea or a bad idea. Now, there are a couple of techniques here that can really help. The first is, if you're trying to decide if you should give up or not, one of the things that you need to do is accept the consequences either way. So what makes it hard to give up and what makes it easy to give up? So if you give up too much, what's the problem? If you don't give up enough, what's the problem? If you stay in things too long, what's the problem? The problem is actually the same. In both cases, the problem is avoidance of a consequence. If I quit, this bad thing will happen, so I'm going to stay over here. If I don't quit, this bad thing will happen, so I need to quit. So in both cases, quitting or not quitting is avoidance of a consequence. And then what ends up happening is, as you decide not to quit, you suffer more, and you're like, maybe I should quit. But then as you think about quitting, oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to find someone again. I don't know what I'm going to do with the job market. I don't know. And so you try to avoid that consequence. So if you really look at your experience of life, if you're stuck around giving up, it is always running away from a bad thing. And then you run away from this bad thing towards this bad thing, and you're like, sucks. And then you run over here and you're like, this sucks. And then you ping pong between two negatives. You're trying to run away from a negative and you're running straight towards a negative. So the way to break out of that cycle is accept either one or both. Say, hey, if I break up, there's a chance that I will be alone for some amount of time, including the rest of my life. Can I accept that? If I stay in this relationship, it's not clear to me that things will get better. This person has certain toxic behaviors. I have certain toxic behaviors. If I stay in this relationship, there's a chance that things will continue to go bad, but I can work towards improving things. In both scenarios, what you really want to do is accept that negative consequence ahead of time. Right? So leaving a relationship is about grief. You have to grieve the loss of that relationship. What is grief? It's acceptance of the negative. Once you accept the worst case scenario and you do it with eyes wide open, then you're mentally prepared for it and you don't have to run away from it. Once you don't have to run away from it, then you can actually solve it. So now we get to one of the weirdest things in life, which is that running away from your problems doesn't solve them, but running towards them does, which we all know. Right? But think about it. That's not how we live. We go on trying to avoid, and then we create. I don't want to do my homework. Oh my God, it's still going to be there tomorrow. I don't want to do my homework. Oh my God, it's still going to be there tomorrow. I don't want to study 1 hour today. So you end up studying 2 hours tomorrow. You don't want to study 2 hours today. Shit, you don't even want to study 1. Now you have to study 3 the next day. So acceptance of the negative consequences from your actions from the get-go is one of the best things that you can do. It will give you a lot of mental fortitude. How do you learn to be strong on the inside? You learn to accept the consequences. It is in the avoidance of your consequences that you become weak. I don't like this consequence, so I'm going to lie. And then people are going to find out, so then you run away, then you hide. Now you are being controlled by the environment. You can't afford for people to find out. Since you can't afford for people to find out, you got to keep them separated. Now you're becoming paranoid, but you're being blown around by whatever is going on in your life. There's no fortitude. Learn to accept. Then look at things with balance. Spend some time with yourself, get a good night's sleep, wake up, and then decide which one feels right to you. Recognize that any decision could be the wrong one, but you're going to make it anyway. And the best that you can do is make the decision that you can make today. There's no such thing as the right decision or the wrong decision. There's only whichever decision appears to be best in this moment with this amount of information. And as you start living your life that way, it becomes way easier and your outcomes will, generally speaking, improve. Right? How can I make a statement like that? It's because we have these evidence-based modalities of psychotherapy, like acceptance and commitment therapy, that tend to, or focus on accepting your problems, not even changing them. It's like crazy. And as you accept your problems get better. You do change your problems and act, but the first step is acceptance. So if you're trying to figure out, should I give up or should I stay? Accept the consequences either way. And then the beautiful thing is you say, in this moment today, this is the best that I can do. And the cool thing is, as you get more information, it allows you to change. Right? Because you haven't decided, oh, I'm not going to give up. Once you adopt that ego, I'm never going to give up. Right? I'm not going to give up today. Like, no one says that. It's like, I'm not going to give up. That's permanent. I'm never going to give up. I'm not a quitter. And then things get worse and worse and worse. And why do you stay? Because I'm not a quitter. So instead, I'm going to stay in this abusive relationship because I ain't a quitter. You'll see? So take care of yourself, take care of your mind, balance your mind, think through things as best as you can, utilize acceptance, and then your mind will be clear. And as your mind becomes clear, your decisions will be better. Make sense? Thank you very much for coming, Kitboga Raiders. I offer y'all one last honor, which is y'all get to decide who we raid. So what do y'all think? Who we raiding? Ooh. Cutie Cinderella is playing Rust. Can I raid her? Does that work? Can we do that? I know I said I would let y'all decide, but... Hitch? Yeah, let's do Cutie Cinderella. Okay. All right, thank y'all very much for coming today. We'll see y'all, I think we'll see y'all when we see y'all. So I think we have a members Q&A tomorrow. And then we've got stream on Friday with Ali Abdal. So take care, everybody.